à tous et
Good
bienvenue.
morning to you all and welcome to the training workshop on the training of leadership organized by leadership and youth. Now, it's a youth forum and there's also Speaker Africa. I'm Fatou. I'm an advisor. Considering the coronavirus pandemic, the theme this year is leadership and the youth in the face of COVID-19. We have all noticed that leadership is indeed a very important factor in the management of COVID-19. That is why the theme of the training this year is conceived as leadership in times of crisis. Today, we have the honor and pleasure to have amongst you this professor, and as well as Bruno COHEN, who is a founder of Galien Foundation, Professor Henri FOURCAULT, Dr. Abdoulaye, director of the Center for Health in Senegal, and Mr. Oumar, as well as Mr. Dinibou of Empower France. Without any further ado, I'll give the floor to Professor Mamadou for the opening remarks. Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Good morning, especially to the youth. Let me start by welcoming you all, and it is indeed with great pleasure that I do so. Welcome to the third edition of the Galien Africa Forum. I should say that you have a pre-forum which is indeed dedicated to the youth. You students, amongst the best of your generation, leaders who are community leaders, but at the same time, young entrepreneurs. This year, because of this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has indeed defied the entire world, we will have to organize our forum from a virtual perspective. But you need not worry because this is a technology which is very practical. We have an agenda which is indeed rich, and we also have participants of high quality. Of course, we can expect a high-level forum. I must also say that Africa and the continent which was indeed least affected by this pandemic, you'll notice that at times we have the impression in this world that things are changing very, very rapidly. And that is why we must remain vigilant. However, in all our respective countries, drastic measures were put in place, be it confinement, total or partial confinement, closing of borders, but also we also had enhanced communication towards the grassroots communities on the risk, as well as the stopgap measures to be implemented. The results are indeed encouraging, thanks to the political leadership, the institutional leadership, where devoted health participants worked, as well as community development workers. That is why the leadership of women, and especially the youth like you, is indeed a leadership which gives us a lot of hope. Together, let us build this on these encouraging results. Let's draw from this workshop on the development of leadership. It is your workshop. It is a workshop which will enable you to capitalize on the knowledge acquired, but I would also like to invite you to continue to develop on this. Throughout the day, there will be many other activities where my friend Bruno, the president of the Galien Foundation, will come and take the floor. And I would simply Before concluding, I'd like to thank Empower for their professionalism, but also all the deans who helped us in the mobilization of students whose enthusiasm is indeed a source of inspiration for us. How can I forget our partners, technical and financial, and all voluntary workers who have worked together with us? I would like to encourage you all to register for every session which you consider interesting during this forum, because this forum is yours. And thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much, Madam Minister of State. As you have indeed said, we have had encouraging results thanks to leadership. And now I'll give the floor to Mr. Bruno COHEN for the official opening of this training. Good morning to you all, Madam Minister of State, dear member of the Scientific Committee, dear invitees and all participants. Let me start by thanking you once again, let me start by thanking the President, Macky Sall, for the organization of this forum in Senegal. There's indeed this COVID-19 pandemic, and because of that, the forum is virtual. And this is the third edition of this forum. This youth forum is a manner of showing your commitment and to show the potential which you have to contribute to the development and innovation in all scientific areas. I would have the opportunity to take part in a development workshop organized by Empower through the very important initiative which is considered as important by President Obama. This leadership is considered as very important in the field of health development, but also for your personal development and that of your communities. As Madam Minister of State said, without leadership, there is no positive results. Today, you are young leaders. Continue to develop and improve your efforts so that tomorrow you will be amongst the greatest leaders and you will leave a great heritage for your country. This forum will also be characterized by prizes for young innovators in the field of health, IFPMA, Speak Up Africa. There will also be opportunities for young entrepreneurs to meet international investors. And this prize is indeed a synergy for young African scientists. And it was founded in Dakar in 2018. So please try to learn more from this day, which is indeed a wonderful opportunity for you. And on this, I declare open this leadership forum, and I wish you all total success on the occasion of the third edition of Galien Africa. I wish you all an excellent day. Thank you very much, Mr. Bruno COHEN. Continue to develop and improve on your efforts. Thank you for this advice. The forum and workshop is officially open now, and I'll give the floor to Professor LALVANI, who will introduce himself.
Fatou. I will speak in English. Since we've started in French, we bring in the English version as well. So first I begin, Your Excellency, Madam Chair, Professor Marie COLL-SECK, President of the unique and iconic Galien Foundation, Bruno COHEN, our esteemed speaker, Dr. BOUSSO from COUS, and our partner organizations, YALI and Speak Up Africa. And most importantly, the youth leaders. It is a great honor and privilege to join you again at the Galien Forum Africa and to speak to the next generation youth leaders. Empower's Center for Leadership Development has been teaching leadership principles and strategies in the United States, Europe, Africa, and Asia. And we have been training and coaching working professionals, directors, youth, and even high school children. This is the third time we are speaking at the youth leaders, to the youth leaders in the Africa Galien Forum. And the caliber of the participants we have met and interacted with, we have always been surprised and impressed. And I'm looking forward to similar impressions again this year, even though we are doing it through a digital format. The director of Empower's Leadership Development Center, Henri Foucault, will be personally guiding you for the next few sessions. And during this time, Empowers and YALI's trainers, coaches, and mentors will help you to become more aware of and realize more of your own special potential, and will help you to continue on your journey towards personal leadership and the leadership in your community and your country. I would like to again thank the Galien Forum Africa for organizing this extraordinary event, a one-of-a-kind for Africa, and it is a privilege to be there, to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, President Cohen. Back to you, Fatou.
Merci, Professeur LALVANI.
Thank you, Professor LALVANI. Now, Dr. Abdoulaye BOUSSO will share his experiences with us. Thank you very much, Madam Fatou. Good morning to you all. Good morning, Madam Minister. It is indeed an honor for me to participate in this meeting. I really don't know whether I have much experience in leadership, but I've been called to share my experience, and I would like to share with our younger brothers and sisters. We talk about crisis. We've had an experience in the implementation of what we call a Center for Urgent Emergency Cases. It has not been really easy to set up these centers, and of course, in our countries, innovation is always a very difficult thing to come by, especially in the field of health, where it's always necessary to change the way we do things. So I have the opportunity today to have someone whom I consider as my master and mentor, the professor who has been at the initiative of this centers. Today, I would say that when these centers were established on the 1st of December 2014, at the time, the Minister of Health told me three things. First, the creation of the center. Two, the appointment as director of the center. And the third, which I believe is the most important, I was given the free hand. I was not given any resources, but I was given the free hand to manage this center. It's this confidence which enables us to set up today what is considered as a model in the sub-regional region. And I think this is very important.
Impacter sur notre pays. Nous pouvons impacter sur la vie des gens.
Hear the speaker. Now, I would say that the issue of resources was not always put at the forefront. At our level, we wanted to have a good vision to know where we were going to, have appropriate objectives, and we did not want to be distracted, because in the field of innovation, quite often people will say they don't have the power, and then you could also hear that this will not work because it is something new. So from a personal perspective, my personal experience is to believe in an objective, to believe in a vision, and to have the luck who indeed supported me, and that is very important. There's also another thing which is important, which I like to share with our young colleagues, is the fact that they should have that self-confidence. They should believe in their capacities, and this is very important also. And this leads me to say that they should take time to study what they are doing, because it is of prime importance. Today, people are always in a haste to achieve. And I would say a professional career is not a race. It's not a sprint race. Unfortunately, today, the real values today is at the level of personal achievements. And people look at achievements at the level of financial achievements. You should have a car, you should get married, but that is not all that matters. Of course, it is important. In a professional career, we should be able to ask a question: what have we done? What is our contribution to our country? What impact do we have on the lives of people? It's not just a matter of personal development, but at some point we should be able to look at this and ask what are our contributions. And there are some people who have spent 20 years in the profession and they will not be able to say in 1/4 of a page to say what they've done for their society, because they have been working from a personal perspective and for themselves. And that's why I want to draw the attention of all the youth on this, because it is not just a matter of personal development, but what we can contribute, what we can share, because
nos pays africains,
it is at
nos pays sous-développés, nous avons
this
besoin
level of
faire
study,
avancer.
it is at this we acquire that knowledge and capacity and see how we can help the African continent. So there's a lot of skills we have seen in Senegal, your youth who can indeed create robots, who can come up with antiseptic solutions, machines which could be used in washing hands. So there is a potential which indeed exists and which we can exploit. And it's a matter of really believing in themselves, and this is very important. It's not a matter of self-sufficiency, it's not a matter of arrogance, it's a matter of believing in yourself. And underneath all of this, we have the capacity, we have the competence. It's a mastery of your profession and humility, and you should be able to end up becoming a complete professional. That's what I wanted to share with our young colleagues on these few issues. And if I have an opportunity, I'll add more to what I've just said, and thank you all very much. Thank you, Dr. Ngusu, for sharing your experiences with us. There are lots of lessons which can be drawn from what you've said. There's the issue of what is our contribution to our country? What impact have we made on our country? It's a very important question. And during this training, we'll have 4 questions. The first will be on the 4 different types of leadership or Bill Taylor. The second will be how to identify your own style of leadership. The third will be on community leadership. And the 4th will be on how to develop your potential as a youth leader, with some information on mentoring and coaching. We're fortunate to have 2 leaders in leadership here, Mr. Mignane, and you can raise your hands at any time to ask questions. And now I'll give the floor to Mr. Henri Foucault, who will introduce himself and who will indeed handle the first part of our meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much, Fatou, for your kind introduction. Now we are going to begin with the first session, and I'll be the moderator. And as announced, the theme is leadership. It's a session which is based on the 4 styles of leadership and how you can identify your own type of leadership. So at the beginning of this session on the development of leadership, I would like to encourage you all to indeed exchange your ideas in an interactive manner. So I'm really inviting you all to participate by clicking on participants. And when you click there, you'll notice that there's a possibility of raising your hand, a blue mark. And when you raise your hand, you'll indeed be given the floor. You'll be well received. So click on participant, raise your hand, state your name, and you'll be able to participate. So considering the very high number of persons present at this session, of course, not everyone will be able to participate. Just a few people may be able to participate. And when your turn comes, I'll advise you to make brief comments to enable other people to express their own points of view. Now, let's go to the 4 different styles of leadership and how you can identify your own style of leadership. This issue of leadership is indeed fundamental. All, as has been established by earlier speakers, we're all concerned by the issue of success. So what really defines our success? How can we attain the success? How can we know we have been successful? How can we be at the best position to make the difference, to have a positive impact on others? What is the best way to bring all other people to a common cause? How can we overcome problems? How can we, first of all, identify the problems and deal with them in a sustainable manner? How can we deal with the challenges which we face, which we will face in the enterprise, in our team, in our lives, and in our career, the failures which are also inevitable, and how can we draw lessons, and how can we continue to attain our goals? These are questions which are indeed of importance to all of us, and which we are going to explore certain aspects. We cannot, of course, explore all of them because we don't have sufficient time. But these are indeed issues which were considered by Bill Taylor for 3 decades, because he has been able to train remarkable leaders in many different areas, and he was able to identify 4 styles which reflect different approaches, how and why leadership. So to deal with these different styles, he came up with 16 questions which will make it possible for all those who respond to these questions. It is indeed a questionnaire which will, of course, be given to you in a short while. You'll be able to identify your own style of leadership. So this is a good starting point. What is our leadership style? What are the different styles which he has been able to identify? Now let's begin. I'm going to present the 4 different styles to you. The first one is the standard entrepreneur. What does it consist of? It is indeed someone for whom the success or the search for success is indeed a strong source of motivation. For the standard entrepreneur, as defined in this study, the values are indeed important, but success, gain fall under a commercial enterprise. And to him, this is indeed important or even primordial. So as we develop these 4 different styles, you will be able to identify your own trends which you prefer. It's not really a matter of judgment, it's just a description to make you aware of the different styles. And I don't think any style is better than the other. It's a matter of knowing them better and have a better knowledge of yourself. This is indeed fundamental in personal development. So the classical entrepreneur or the standard entrepreneur, in addition to what we believe as possible, he is able to overcome obstacles and achieve more with less. The second style is that of, in quote, the modern missionary. In this case, the leader tries to construct something which will have an impact, which indeed responds to values. Success is characterized by human values. He's going to undertake risk, but the objective of this risk is not just to expect profit, but to create sustainable impact, which would indeed correspond to a cause. That's for the modern missionary. The third style is the one who solves problems, a problem solver. Here, emphasis is laid on concrete results, and it relies on expertise, on experience. It searches for new opportunities, how to overcome difficulties which they face on the way. And the problem solver will listen to his colleagues, but finally, he relies on the expertise and opportunities and would end up relying on his own opportunities and experiences. While the fourth type is the one who goes out in search of solutions. Here, he lays emphasis on the power of the group, that is collective genius. He meets them, he works with them, he's convinced that there's a world of knowledge. He knows that he has the experience, but he believes that others can also contribute in improving on the solution, which will be appreciated by all. So he hopes to have results which will be a collective result. So this fourth group is humble, and at times he can even stay at the background. So these are the 4 different groups. In the course of the next few hours, we'll be discussing these 4 different styles of leadership. They're all different from one another. No one is really better than the other, but they all require us to clearly identify our own style as opposed to the other. So let me give you a small quotation from Bill Taylor, who explains why it is important for each person to know his own style of leadership, because if we don't understand what we are, we may not be able to take the right decisions. So why are we doing what we are doing? And when we know why we are doing what we are doing, we'll be efficient and we'll be able to welcome the contributions of others to achieve our goal. And I'm sure many amongst us here today agree with this declaration, because it establishes the link between understanding who we are, our leadership style, and the success we are aiming at. In support of this article on the leadership style, there are two questions which have been asked at the beginning of, before the beginning of this session on leadership. The first question: indicate three aspects of your life, your work, on which your style of leadership has an impact. And the second question is, what is the interest in knowing your own style of leadership? Now let's try to analyze your answers. We'll try to see how many participants have responded. There were 136 persons who responded to this question, and it is indeed very important to see that the majority were women. That's 59%, and this is very encouraging, and it is also to be encouraged. And amongst those who responded, we notice that there's 68.4% between the age group of 25 and 40 years, and 24% between 26 and 30 years. So together they represent 87% between the ages of 18 and 30 years. So this is indeed the future of scientific leaders, who indeed represent what future scientific leaders who are here and those who are not here will be able to accomplish. And I believe that generations of Africans here and in future will depend on you. So I'd like to thank you all for your participation in filling this questionnaire and in mobilizing work. And so I noticed that the youth are indeed mobilized, and they have a key role to play in the scientific leadership in Africa. Now, let's analyze your responses from a closer perspective. And the first question is three aspects of your working life on which your leadership style has an impact. For 80 to 85% of you, the leadership style has a major impact. I really don't know whether you see what I mean. This is indeed undeniable. We also notice that 20% responded that just
Et 40% ont dit que le style de leadership a un impact sur les pairs.
And we say that 40% had an impact on their peers. So we'll come back to this, and we will reanalyze this vision that we have of leadership in relation to what we've already said while presenting the different styles, and the impact that we would like to have in the common vision, the definition of success that we can make happen. We know that success doesn't happen alone. It is by working with others, and we'll come back to this question that is very important. Now, the second question that was asked to do, what is the interest of understanding one's own leadership style? Now we can see that 94% of you answered that this helped me to have a better knowledge of my strengths and weaknesses, and 91% said that this helped me improve myself. And indeed, we've already established in the first part of our discussion that there is a close link between knowing oneself and the success that we want to have. So these were the 4 styles. The classic entrepreneurs that is motivated by profit more than values. I'm trying to just summarize it here, you know. The modern missionary that wants to build something with meaning, that puts the focus on human values. You then have the problem solver that believes in experience, expertise, maybe of his own expertise more. And then the solution finders that really builds on the group and that is more modest and humble. Now I open the floor to you. I invite you to take the floor and participate around one question. Let's come back maybe to the impact of your leadership style in your life and on and is there a relation between your leadership style and the member of your team at work? Now you have the floor. I see that to be able to look at your answers, yes. So you have the floor. I will, as soon as I see a blue hand raised, I will give the name of the person and the technical team will open your microphone. So you are invited to speak. I can see some hands being raised. I don't know. Wait, yes. So Mr. Abdoulaye Koulibaly.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, all. Good morning. My name is Abdoulaye Koulibaly and I am from Mali. And I believe, in my opinion, that when you know your leadership style, it has an impact on your surrounding. It allows you to create a close link with your partners when you know that how you work, and this also allows you to make decisions and to know the opinion of others. I believe that our leadership style will allow us to better impact our collaborator and better guide them and become mentors even. Thank you very much, Mr. Koulibaly from Mali. Very good. Mr. Papa Toutandien.
Bonjour.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to take the floor. I believe that as a development actor, mastering your leadership style will allow you to better manage your organization with a better organization and leadership. And on this note, thank you. Thank you very much for your participation. Now, Mr. Tierno Saidou. I can't see others, unfortunately. Good morning, all. My name is Tierno Saidou. I believe that knowing your leadership style has an impact on your surrounding, because a leader is someone that is that is able to guide a group. You cannot guide a group if you have no clue of what the group thinks, and therefore listening to your surroundings and to your group is very important. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Fatoumata Diogo, please. Good morning. My name is Fatoumata Diogo. I am from the region of Ziguinchor. I would just like to say that to me, leadership is bringing a group towards a well-defined objective, meaning that we all need to work hand in hand. And this is why it's important to have privileged relations with the members of the group so that they are feeling comfortable and they can mobilize their efforts for the success of your own objective. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Aïssatou Mansour-Si, please.
Est-ce que vous avez le micro?
Is your microphone open?
Y a-t-il un problème technique?
Is there any technical difficulties you're facing?
Bonjour, madame.
Good morning. My name is Asetou Mansoursi from Mali, and I would like to just add something. Leadership has an impact on work, because if I really understood the question correctly, of course, given the different categories of leadership, you'll know how to impact your surrounding and your environment, and also know better about the people that work with you. Thank you. This is what I had to say. Thank you very much. It is really, it's good to hear everyone participating, answering the question. It is also great to say where you're from, Mali, Casamance with Bigancho, and I'm sure that there are many other regions represented here. Mr. Roland Ankansen, I'm really sorry if I butchered your name. And then I can see other questions online, and I'll try to answer them as well. Yes, good morning. Yes, my name is Roland Akamtine from Cameroon, and I would like first of all to thank you for inviting me and give on the question. I would like to just add the fact that understanding your competence area is allows you to assert yourself as a leader. Why? Because leadership is quite a large area. You have to understand where you are working, in which area you're working, to be able to assert yourself. And by knowing your area, this is how you can improve yourself as a leader. A leader that has no idea of where he is, his area of expertise, will not be able to really succeed as a leader. And I believe that therefore you need to know more. Yes, I think that this, you could even add that of making your own vision happen. Yes, thank you very much. Can you say the country you're from again? Yes, from Cameroon. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to Cameroon as well then. Tata and Aline as well. I forgot to tell you that you can also speak in French or in English.
And the interpreters will be happy to go either way. So Tata Eileen, I suspect an English-speaking person.
Okay, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor. As you have rightly said, I'm an English-speaking Cameroonian, so I am calling from Cameroon. Actually, what I wanted to say is leadership has a lot to do with productivity, because if you don't have a good, I don't know, leadership style, get it? It is, you are not going to how can I put it, achieve what you want to get and all that. So whatever kind of leadership you are trying to exercise, it is going to have a lot to do with the level and with the amount of productivity. So that was just what I wanted to add. It has a lot to do with productivity and achieving your desired goals. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Eileen, for your comment coming from Cameroon. Indeed, we certainly all believe that one cannot achieve success alone. There has to be involvement of other people who help us along the way. So recognizing other people's contribution is essential to achieving one's own vision in the future, I mean, and fulfilling one's own objectives. So thank you very much. Maintenant, Rose Nabi Deborah Karimi Moutouri. I suspect English speaker too. I may be wrong.
Hello, my name is Rose Nabi and I'm from Kenya. And firstly, I wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation. It's really been enlightening, especially knowing that, you know, the different styles. And I just wanted to contribute by saying that learning one's own style also helps, and the different ones also helps when collaborating with other leaders in order to achieve global impact and also global change in a positive way. And it also, this presentation has enabled us as youth leaders to gain more about our self-concept and how we know ourselves, and also to understand the different ways different leaders can respond during a crisis and otherwise. So thank you very much. My name is Rose Nabi from Kenya.
Very good. Thank you, Rose Nabi from Kenya. Interesting thought that you raised. In fact, we'll come back to it a bit later when we speak about exercising leadership in the context of crisis. And indeed, the challenge is there. The question is, how do you cope? And how do you turn what could be perceived as an obstacle into success? So thank you very much for your comment. Sori Kamara. That's excellent. Thank you so much, all of you, for your short, precise comments. That's excellent. That's what we need to keep things moving. Sori Kamara.
Sori Kamara, vous avez la parole.
Ah.
Allez-y.
I saw your mic being active. J'ai vu votre micro activé et puis...
I saw your mic open and then it just vanished from the screen. Maybe it will come back. I have the impression that we've lost Sori Kamara. I have no information from the technical assistants. I can't see his name anymore. So now what I would like to propose is to give the floor to Jean-Marc Bédier. And if we see Sori Kamara, then we can give him the floor later. Jean-Marc Bédier, you have the floor. Thank you very much for allowing me to give the floor. My name is Jean-Marc Bédier from the University of Health Sciences in Dakar, Senegal. I would say that it's important to know about your leadership style. And I think that as a leader, you don't know everything on everything, about everything. And I believe that it is very important to know what you can do for the project with others. Thank you. Yes, very good. Thank you very much for bringing it this nuance. Roselyne Shimakalu, you have the floor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Roselyne Shimakalu from Nigeria.
Very good. So we had Kenya.
Thank you very much for. Thank you very much for this very enlightening presentation, sir.
You're welcome.
I think it's extremely important to know your leadership style to help you exert the proper influence in achieving your goal. But I have some questions, sir.
Please.
I was wondering if there are particular leadership styles that are suited to particular organizations.
Sorry, I missed the question. You were wondering if? I think the connection is not very good.
Yes, especially. Okay, sorry, I was saying that, for example, not-for-profit organizations, are they more suited to modern missionary styles? And if you have a particular leadership style, is it possible to develop yourself to become
other styles?
To gain another leadership style that is best suited to your organization? Thank you.
That is an excellent question. And I think I see that question in so many words coming from the Q&A exchange box. I'm not sure if I should continue in English or in French, Fatou. Is it okay if I continue in English, or should I switch to, because the person asked in English, so I should speak in English, right?
Est-ce que je devrais m'exprimer en anglais?
Yeah, because si je réponds en français à quelqu'un qui a
If I
posé
answer in French to someone that asked the question in English, then it's not the same, is it? No, I believe that the translator, the interpreters are here for that.
checking in what language I should be answering you. So this is a very good question, actually. It deserves to be answered now. Leadership style has to do with each individual. We all have what I could call a default mode, which is a combination, which is the result of a combination of factors. Our genetic encoding, socialization factors, to which we have been subjected early on in our lives. According to psychologists, at the age of 2 or 3, the basic components of our personality are set. And then you have a third element, which is exposure, which is the result of exposure to external influences, school, primary school, high school, then going to university, then starting to work, developing, being exposed to different kinds of experiences, challenges, and all of that shapes our personality. But at the core, we have a default mode. And that default mode is the one you need to be acquainted with, because to the extent that you know who you are at the core, what are your natural immediate tendencies or preferences, the better you will be in a position to work on those to further develop other aspects of your own leadership style. So to get back to your question, let's say I have a classic leader's profile. That's my default mode. I'm not thinking, well, I know I want to be a missionary style or problem solver style. No, I know that deep down, my natural tendency is that of a classic, if you want, a leader. And I know that because of the fact that I work for an NGO, I also need to value the input of other people, work with people, be in a position to influence them so that they can contribute to the success of the whole. Then, because I'm an enlightened leader, I will work on myself in order to develop characteristics that go beyond my default mode, my default style. So that's part of the growth of each individual into the kind of leadership that will be necessary to the situation. Yes? I heard somebody speak to me, no? So do you see what I'm trying to say, Rose? In other words, we all have a leadership style, which is, it is important to recognize it, to know what it is. And from that, we can grow into anything we want. So to go back to the 4 styles presented by Mr. Taylor, let's say I have a classic style by default. Does it mean I'm incapable of working with other people, listening to them and grow with them? No, it doesn't mean that. But it means that I know exactly in what areas I need to grow, to make changes, to develop in order to become more effective. Just the same, let's say I have a missionary modern missionary style, working with people for a cause, but the demands of my work and the organization for which I work require that I'm more incisive, more get to the bottom of things, more results focus, profit focus. Then I will know where to develop personally and where to grow as an individual. Does that answer your question, Rose?
Yes, it does, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let me take maybe one or two more, and then I will answer some of the questions that I've received online. Mohamed Sarr. Sarr or Sarre?
I'll not switch back to French. I think Mohamed Sarr or Sare.
Okay, bonjour.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. My name is Mohamed Sare. And where are you from? Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohamed Sare, and I'm from Burkina Faso, from the University Joseph Kizzevo in Ouagadougou. So I think it is paramount to define your leadership style. And with this, to have a vision, and this vision will allow you to express yourself, to better understand through your collaborators and the team with whom you're working. It will allow you to know the direction you want to take, and this will define your involvement level by at the same time influencing your productivity. And I believe therefore it is essential to be able to know where you're going, and from there your team will be able to know what are the expected results and what is expected of them as well. And therefore, I think that is very important and interesting to have this type of discussion, and this will allow us to better acquire more knowledge and learn what we can do to really have an impact on our society. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Mr. Sare from Burkina Faso. Now, I would like to come back to some of the comments I've received online. Can we have two different leadership styles? I believe that in what I've said earlier in English, that you had the answer. We all have a dominant leadership style. We all know our natural preferences and natural tendencies, but we are also able to adapt to changing situations. Isn't it true that even when we are under pressure, when we're faced with a very difficult situation, we react in a way that is sometimes surprising to ourselves and to others that believe that they knew us? And why do we react that way? Why do we have this default mode, this mode that is in a way anchored within ourselves? It is because this is our personal style. Now, knowing it helps, because then you know where you need to improve. We are not put in a box. It is not because we know that we have a certain leadership style. I need actually to add that Mr. Bill Taylor has identified 4 leadership styles, but others have identified other leadership styles. Regardless, the idea here is to really know oneself and to be able to adapt given different situations. So can we have 2 different leadership styles? I'd say no, because we have a dominant style, and then we can maybe move towards 4 or 5 different styles, but it is this process of growth and individual development that is important, and we'll come back to it when we will talk about emotional intelligence and the link between this and efficient leadership. Another question.
Oh, I don't speak French. Can you please translate the answers to English? Alors, je pense que c'est fait au fur et à mesure. Hein?
I think the translation is, the interpreting is done simultaneously by interpreters. Do not forget to choose your channel. The difference between a manager, well, in the question, in the session that will start in a minute, we'll talk about the difference between a manager and a leader, and we'll talk also about coaches at the very in the very last session. And when it comes to captain, maybe we will not really touch upon this question, but maybe we'll come back to it at some point. So this was on some of the questions that were asked. I see a leader that doesn't know itself, cannot develop and guide a group. Yes, of course. Can we have 2 styles of leadership? I think that we've already answered that. I think that now we need to move forward, and I think that, I'm so sorry, I have so many screens in front of me. I need to get rid of some. And now we'll move into our second session that follows the first session. And now we'll talk about your leadership style, the definition, the main characteristic. Can we learn to become a good leader? And then we'll look at your style. So this question, we've established it already. This question of leadership is fundamental. It is closely linked to our ability to work with others, to have an impact on others, to succeed in our project, to influence others, and also to develop our capacity to solve problems and overcome obstacles. And it is linked to our disposition, our openness to others' inputs, our openness towards others. Indeed, we can realize that in your personal preferences, whatever the name, I know that, for example, I rely on what myself I think, and I base my decisions on my way of thinking. I know it, it's anchored in me, and to be able to be open to others, it means that I have to make a conscious effort. Or I know, for example, that I always listen to others up to the point that I cannot make decision rather. I know that there is a time to listen, and there is also a time to make a decision.
So there's time for everything. There's time to do different things and arrive at a decision. So it is important for us to situate what we are doing in regard to personal development. Now let's continue with other aspects of leadership. First of all, we must admit that to be a good leader, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good manager. And the fact that we're a good manager doesn't mean we're a good leader. So can we say this one is a leader and that one is a manager? No, quite often it is the same person who has to play both roles. Therefore, making this distinction is important because the characteristics are different, but they are complementary, as we are going to see. To respond, therefore, to the question, what are the characteristics of a good leader, of an excellent leader? An excellent leader has that capacity to establish a vision, a clear direction. And there we are talking about leadership amongst persons. When we work, for instance, in a hospital, in a pharmacy, in a dispensary, in an NGO, at the level of the community. So there should be a clear vision, a clear direction, and a good self-conscience. This is fundamental. Because if we are not having that self-consciousness, and what does that mean? We should be able to admit our strong points, but we should also be able to admit our weaknesses without really closing our eyes or refusing. We should be self-conscious, and there is that positive energy. You should accept change, and change is indeed something very common, and indeed you should be able to accept it because it could be indeed overwhelming. It is also an act of leadership to accept change, and a good, excellent leader should be able to inspire and to motivate. These are some of the other characteristics. I don't really want to claim that these are the only characteristics. There are others which we may mention. There's a capacity, the ability to influence. So an excellent leader should be able to influence others. In English, we say to make the case, that's to convince. He should be able to lead efficient teams. He should be able to adapt to changing requirements and situations. An excellent leader cannot say, I'm in a very good situation, everything is working well, so there should be no need for change. And once there is a change, he will lose control. No, an excellent leader should be able to adapt to changing situations, to changing requirements. He should be able to inspire and motivate. He should be able to have empathy. That is, he should be able to feel the way others feel. That's the emotions of others, without necessarily judging them, but recognizing their feelings. He should be able to act and react in a manner which shows understanding of the way the other persons feel. And when we look at the last two, because they are of particular importance, that is to be able to listen. If we show proof of empathy, then we should be able to listen. In English, it is easy. We say to listen to listen at, to listen over, and to listen into. I'm sorry for the interpreters because it is not really easy to interpret all of this, but the idea is we can listen superficially while doing something else, but we could also listen by trying to understand and analyze what the person is saying, by saying, we agree, or I don't agree with this, or I don't agree with that. And the person actually feels it. So where there is an opening, we immediately intervene to change the trend of the discussion or to argue against what the person has said, the speaker has said. There's also the aspect of empathic listening. That is, you listen where you suspend any judgment, you suspend any assumption, that's any preconceived ideas, and we try to put ourselves in the position of the speaker. And when we learn to listen in this manner, we understand the person who is speaking. To that end, there's empathy. You should be able to listen. And the last challenge of all leaders is indeed humility. There's a researcher, Stephen Covey, who wrote a book about 20 years ago known as The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I can see my friend Oumar laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. And this book, I think it has been translated into French. That is the translation in French. And one of these habits is this.
First to understand and then to be understood. C'est-à-dire,
that is the first habit. That is, you should try to understand first, and then you try to make yourself understood. And you should follow that order. That is the wisdom of a wise leader. And when we talk of excellent leadership, I think no one will disagree with me when I cite names like Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, and others. I'm not saying that there are only these two. These are people who know how to listen, who know how to influence, and who know how to lead. And indeed, there are people who have changed the situation in many ways. And of course, these are all general considerations. we're just glossing through leadership, but at the same time, we're trying to show that to be a leader, one has to have certain characteristics, which include, as we saw a while ago at the beginning, a very good self-consciousness, because a good leader is not just a leader at the age of 15 or 18 and afterwards everything is done. No, it develops over time. It is built over time and it becomes more and more efficient. Now let's move on to the manager in a completely different register. Quite often we should remember that people think it's the same thing, but a manager quite often deals with how to do it. He defines the strategy, he plans the work, he organizes training, he follows evaluation, monitoring and evaluation, he devises mechanisms of, and then he applies the discipline, manages resources, and reports on work and the reports of the work done. But these are very important functions. No institution can function efficiently without managerial talents. But the two are different. The two characteristics are different. Now, let me ask you a question, and I would indeed like to have an answer to all these questions. I've indeed appreciated your answers a while ago because they were brief and they went straight to the point, and that is what could enable us to forge ahead in our discussion. So once more, I invite you all to take the floor and to respond to this question. According to you, which of these two characteristics is more difficult to acquire and why?
Dès que votre micro est activé, je vois qu'il est encore barré. Madame Ahmad.
Your microphone, please.
Est-ce qu'il y a un problème technique?
Is there any technical problem?
Écoutez, je ne sais pas ce qui se passe. Je propose.
I do not know what is happening. I would suggest that we give the floor to someone else and then we'll come back. Well, I'm trying to look at the microphone of Bintou Mansare. Madame Kalkap, please take the floor.
Madame Bintou Mansare, on ne vous entend pas.
Madame Bintou Mansare, we can hear you speaking.
On ne vous entend pas, Madame Bintou Mansare.
We cannot hear you, Madame Bintou Mansare. We cannot hear you. We hear a voice at the background, but we cannot hear you clearly. I really don't know what the problem is.
Alors, et là, ça n'a pas marché. Voici maintenant, je pense, Madame Ahmad Reana Kaokab.
Well, it has not been successful. So, Madame Ahmad, she has not turned on her microphone.
C'est dommage, hein?
It's a pity.
Alors, bon, je propose qu'on.
I would suggest that we try Madame Bintou Mansare once more. Madame Bintou Mansare, you have the floor. Madam, try to get closer. Kindly get closer to your microphone.
Désolé, mais je n'entends pas, Madame. Hein?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear Madame Bintou Mansare. I cannot hear her.
Voilà, je pense que Madame Kaokab peut parler maintenant.
Now, Madame Kalkap may take the floor now.
Ah bon, donc quelqu'un a ouvert le micro de Monsieur Papa.
So someone has opened the microphone of Papa Tano. Well, good morning. As a development actor who works all the time with the youth, I noticed that to be a leader is more difficult than to be a manager. Because we can see from afar how someone can manage with efficiency, but to be a leader, you have to be involved and to be able to make people do. And once someone is able to make others do something, he'll have that capacity to get it done. Now, for me, the manager is specific. You can do it if only you have the concepts. Because when we look at our lives on a daily basis, we manage every day. In the enterprise, we manage, and even in our daily lives, we have to manage. So it is very difficult to have the characteristics of a leader, but it is quite possible because we can learn to become a leader with time. I can even give an example. I have an association of entrepreneurs in Senegal. This organization goes to secondary schools in Senegal to train them on the concepts of entrepreneurship and leadership. And it was through that training that I had this idea. Now, this youth have that capacity to have emotion. They believe that if you're not a leader, you may not be able to fulfill your mission, and all the time you will be disappointed. So I can say that to be a leader is indeed more complicated and more difficult than to be a manager. Thank you very much, Mr. Dian. It's a very important contribution. I see the name of Madame Kalkap once more. Has a problem been solved, a technical problem? We'll try once more. Madame Kalkap, perhaps it's on your side. Now we are listening to you. You have the floor. Please get closer to your microphone. We cannot hear you. Yes, you may proceed. Yes, good morning. It was an error. I did not raise my hand. It's an error. Okay, no problem. Abdulrahman Sisse, you have the floor. Abdulrahman Sisse, you have the floor.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Allez-y.
Good morning to you all. Good morning to you all. You may proceed, Mr. Sisse. I'm Abdulrahman Sisse from Senegal, and I would like to share the views expressed by the earlier speaker to a certain extent. I think it is very difficult to be a leader than to be a manager. And then we can compare both in the framework of an enterprise. A leader, it's difficult to be a leader at the level of an enterprise because the manager needs to respect certain rules and certain principles which are already established to ensure that the enterprise functions effectively. But if we have to follow these principles, we cannot go against the principles of the enterprise. So it is more difficult to be a leader than to be a manager, because at times to be a manager, you just need to follow instructions which have been pre-established to make the institution function properly. Whereas to be a leader, it is more difficult because you have to show proof of lots of capacities of problems to deal with problems which come up in the enterprise. Thank you very much for your contribution. I think we agree with what you have said, and there is a consensus that indeed it is more difficult to be a leader, an efficient leader, than to be a manager. It's completely different, but it is a greater challenge to be a leader than to be a manager. Now, let me look at some of the comments which have been sent. I think everyone agrees, but someone says that both of them are equally difficult, because to be a manager, you need to be a professional, it is codified, etc., and you need to learn. But for a leader, you need personal and interpersonal qualities too. The difficulties are on both sides, but all researchers, all specialists in the field of leadership admit that, and by way of example, to influence someone who doesn't agree with you, when you know that the person needs to understand your point of view for things to move ahead, because you're the head of the team, you're the team leader. It is important for every member of a team to be on the same page. All researchers know that it is difficult to have that capacity to mobilize and inspire people than it is for other aspects, of management, because it has to do with personality, psychology, temper, precise rules, and we're not just saying that the role of a manager is not important. We are just trying to situate both of them from a scientific level to look at the difficulties inherent in both roles. Now we'll continue very quickly, and I'll read the comments. There are very many comments, and I'd like to thank you all. So one of the questions I saw a while ago is, can we learn? That is, it suffices to have some of the characteristics. Well, I think it is a process. Today, if I know, for instance, that I have two or three characteristics, and since I've worked a lot, and I know that I have to work in another area, I could work to develop that other area. So this can be built over time. And we should be able to work with our eyes open. And when we work that way, we may be able to attain success. Now let's continue with this question. Why leadership? Why is it necessary in the area of public health, in communal life or community life? This is indeed your area where you function. Why at the level of the hospital? Why is it important at the level of the hospital? I really don't want to focus too much on that. I wanted us to dwell on more important issues, but be it within an NGO or within the community or within a village or the town or a quarter, or be it the role which you have or will have to play within the health structures of your country, perhaps at the national or district level or the regional level, village dispensaries, health centers. Leadership will always be required in all these cases. Now let's move quickly to the next question. Can we learn to become a leader? I think we have already answered part of this question. The answer is yes, we can learn to become a leader. And where does it begin? It begins by self-development. I have a screen before me. Let me try to remove it. So we need to know ourselves, and to know ourselves, we begin with emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is no longer a secret, because many people have an idea of what emotional intelligence means. During your higher studies, perhaps you studied about emotional intelligence, and the question is, what is the link between emotional intelligence and success and leadership? I would like to have your own points of view on this, because I believe it is important. Tell me what you know about emotional intelligence and the importance you give to emotional intelligence. I see the name of Sori Kamara, whom we're not able to listen to because his microphone did not work. Sori Kamara, now you have the floor. A while ago, it didn't work. I hope it works this time. Sorry, Kamara, you have the floor.
Non? Bon.
No.
Ça n'a pas l'air de marcher.
It doesn't seem to be working.
C'est dommage.
It's a pity.
Non, ça ne marche pas, hélas.
No, it's not working, unfortunately. Now, we'll give the floor to Abdoulaye Coulibaly. Abdoulaye Coulibaly, you have the floor. Good afternoon, I'm Abdoulaye Coulibaly from Mali. I think emotional intelligence is important because it enables us to know the feelings of others and we'll be able to deal with them because we know what they expect from us. And that will enable us, it will guide us, and it will enable us to move towards our community, and it will enable us to improve on our objectives or change these objectives within our community. Thank you. Thank you too. Of course, Mr. Coulibaly. Perhaps when you say change our objectives to be able to adapt, with your permission, I would like to express some reservation because a leader should be constant and his focus should be on the direction to follow. So with your permission, in certain cases, it may not be possible to change the objectives, but it is important to ensure that everyone is aligned behind these objectives because if they are established objectives for the group. So that is one of the challenges of leadership. Now, I think we'll now continue. I'd like to thank you all for your contributions. But let me say this. IQ, that's intelligent quotient, versus emotional quotient. Which one is more important, intelligent quotient or emotional quotient? To summarize, I would like to share with you this observation made by many researchers, many high-level observers, and it's been over 25 years that I've been working in this area of leadership development in international organizations such as the United Nations. And I also am part of those who note that a strong emotional quotient is a guarantee for success in life, and it's a predicator of success in life more than even a strong intelligence quotient. That is, someone who has a strong, high-level emotional quotient right from childhood could be able to, we could predict that such a person could be more successful than someone who has a high intelligent quotient, but a low emotional quotient. That's a topic for food for reflection, but I just want us to reflect on this. Why? Because there's a lot of evidence in that regard. Someone who has a high emotional quotient, well, people listen to him. He has that capacity to mobilize more people than someone who has a high intelligent quotient, except he also has a similar level of emotional quotient. Consequently, we can say that the person with a high emotional quotient will be better placed to influence, to inspire, and overcome difficulties in regard to empathy than someone who has a high intelligence quotient, who perhaps may be lacking in emotional quotient. And that is what happens quite often in universities. You see some young people who are extremely intelligent, perhaps more intelligent than others, but they are lacking. They cannot open up to others. They cannot open up to others and deal with others. So they have a higher intelligence quotient, but a lesser emotional quotient. And finally, 10, 15 years later, we'll notice that this one has succeeded, that one has succeeded, and this one has not succeeded. Why? Because the emotional quotient person had that ability to attract others, and this leads him to that leadership capacity. Now let's talk a little about emotional intelligence, the basic concepts. I think perhaps you know some of these concepts. That's Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book in 1990, a book entitled Emotional Intelligence. And researchers had carried out research in the 1950s, and they took into consideration the 4 components of intelligence, emotional intelligence. What are they? There's self-consciousness. Where does it all begin? These are the 4: self-consciousness, self-management, social consciousness. So where do we begin? Management of relations. You now have the floor. There's Mamadou. Mamadou, you have the floor.
Dès que vous avez le micro, vous pouvez y aller.
So once you have the microphone, you may proceed.
Allô?
Allez-y.
Tout commence par la conscience de
You may
soi.
proceed.
Bravo, très bien. Hein? Est-ce que tout le monde
I'd
est
like to
d'accord?
begin with that self-awareness. Fatoumata Ramana Diallo.
Allez-y, hein, dès que vous avez... Allez-y, votre micro
All
est
of
actif.
you may proceed. Your microphone is open. Good morning. Good morning to you all. I'm Diallo Mataramina. I'm a Guinean, and I study in the University of Conakry. I also believe that we should begin with self-awareness. That's where it all begins, and the rest of it will follow. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we all agree. It all begins with this self-awareness. I don't know whether you can see my cursor. Self-awareness is a starting point. And what does it encompass? It encompasses precision, courage, transparency, self-awareness. Then, after self-awareness, where do we go? Where do we go to social awareness, self-management, or management of relations with others? Because when I say, for instance, that I always tend to listen less to others, I am very much aware of that. People don't need to tell me. I know myself very much, and I know that I don't listen to others very, very well. So perhaps I may have to use psychometric instruments to be able to understand. I would always seek feedback from others, that is, those who have the courage to say what they see in me. And that way, I carry out a self-analysis, and I know that I always tend not to listen to others appropriately. So I have 2 choices in that case. Either I believe that I am right, and always right, and I'll always continue to be successful, perhaps not at the highest level, or I should say that I will be able to gain more if I listen to others. That way, I should be able to manage my approach. I should make an effort to develop and to be able to set my objectives on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. I should be able to assess my progress and work on that. And along the same lines, when I have a clear vision of what I am, that is indeed very important. Because even if we don't want someone else to tell us, we ourselves should know, and we should be able to know this. It's a weak point, but it's also a strong point, because at least I know my weak points and I'll be able to manage them better. I'll take into consideration the feelings of others. I should be able to observe without judging, and I should make an effort to understand and make an effort to understand. And it's a combination of all of this, knowledge of myself and understanding of others, which leads to a better management of relations with others. It's also at the level of the family. It's also at the level of the school. It's also at the level of where we work and in life in general. So it's important to read the book by Daniel Goleman on this particular topic. Now, a very last point before break, it is important to note that emotional intelligence comprises self-awareness, mastery of your emotions, that's self-control. You know yourself and you should be able to manage yourself. You want to develop, you want to grow, and you should be able to control yourself so that you shouldn't work on your impulses. You shouldn't do what you really don't want to do. You shouldn't act on your impulses. There's also adaptability, which we talked a while ago. There are changing situations and changing challenges. We should be able to adapt and remain positive. That makes us an efficient leader, and it enables us to
social.
forge ahead. There's also a results orientation. To be results oriented, a while ago we talked about empathy, that is being able to place yourself in the position of others and know what others feel. And this leads to organizational conscience at the level of health institutions and at the level of the community and what is going on around you. And all of this lead to greater influence. And that's what you really need to have as a leader. That's the capacity to be a coach or a mentor for those you are working for. And there'll be management of conflicts. And this should not go beyond simple disagreements.
There are two aspects: conflict prevention
pour aborder les questions litigieuses éventuellement avant
de ce passage of time.
Donc, il y a beaucoup de choses à faire en amont. Wow. Dans prévention, gestion et résolution. Je dis bien gestion des conflits et pas résolution parce qu'on espère qu'on n'en arrive pas là. Je vais un peu vite, mais c'est juste pour vous donner les grandes lignes de ce qui est impliqué dans chacune de ces étapes. Et puis le travail en équipe, ça c'est le but ultime. Il est difficile de parler de leadership en solo. C'est toujours en multo. Donc, on est à plusieurs.
It is difficult to talk about leadership alone. This is an inspirational leadership. This is the broad line of this second session on the development of leadership. We'll now take a break, Fatou, and do a test to identify your leadership style. Fatou, are you saying something to me? No, not to me. Okay. So we know that we need a high level of emotional intelligence. So now I ask you to follow this website. You have a quiz in English that has been given to us by Bill Taylor. And this will allow you to look at the style you have. You shouldn't answer this question the way you think you should answer. No, you need to answer this question with your default mode. If you answer with your default mode, and not what you think you should answer because it's not really the truth, but it is what you think you should answer, then the result will not really match your personal leadership style. So this really requires a high level of honesty and self-reflection, you know. There is no good or wrong answer. So please do fill in the questions the better you can. If you are a French speaker, the translation was sent to you, I believe so. And you will have to fill in the quiz in English. However, you will have the translation, the French translation, that will allow you to know where to, what to fill in. If you are an English speaker, you just have to click on the link. Then you will be asked your email address. And once you've clicked on it,
Nous avons une
They
pause
will
de 15
give
minutes.
you your personal result.
Je vais
We
passer la
have a
parole
15 minutes break.
et
I will
introduire.
give the floor to Fatou that will close this session and introduce the break.
Merci, merci beaucoup, Henri, pour
Thank you very much, Henri,
Alors, le
for
lien du quiz,
these very
traduction en
enriching
français,
sessions. The link of the quiz and the translation in French was sent to the participant via email and in the WhatsApp group of the student.
vous pouvez y
The
accéder.
technical team
Pour
has
les
also
francophones, comme
shared
Henri
the link in the
le
chat
quiz
so
est en
you
anglais.
can access it.
Que lire la
As Henri
question
has
et les
said,
réponses
the
en
quiz
français
is in
en
English.
utilisant la
You
traduction.
can read
Et
the question and
ensuite,
the
vous cliquez
answers
sur les
in French from what was
en
sent
anglais.
to you.
Merci encore, Henri. Le quiz est très, très intéressant. Donc, on se retrouve dans une dizaine de minutes.
And then
10 minutes.
we'll resume in about 10 minutes. Yes, 10 minutes. So we'll resume. I was just told that on the 172 participants, some of them are in a room with a projection for 25 people. I think it's a brilliant idea, really. So congratulations. Now that you know your leadership style, out of the 4 Bill Taylor's style, we'll talk about them on session 4 with Mr. Henri Foucault, but now we'll move on to session 3 with community leadership chaired by Mr. Mignane DIOUF.
Bonjour Fatou, bonjour à tout le monde. Et
Good morning, Fatou. Good morning, all and all the Galiens here with us today. I know that what we've heard with Henri just a few minutes ago on leadership and management has allowed all of you to have a better idea of what you are and what you can do. So I would like to add to what Henri has said. I would like to add the notion of community leadership, but during a pandemic or crisis, this will allow all the participants to really ask questions and maybe in a way to project themselves in the future. Ask a question on who they are, where they are, and how they are. But this will also allow us to talk about this theme and ask a question that it is quite often we ask ourselves, what can we do for our community, for example, or what is our community doing for us? So my name is Mamadou Mignane. I am a trainer in leadership, but also a sociologist trainer, YALI trainer, and a coordinator of the social forum. I am Senegalese, but also an African, and it is very important for me to share with you this very important moment with my friend, with my friend BOUSSO, Henri, and everyone. We will try to share the presentation, and sometimes we'll have some discussion. I don't know if it is ready, and if it's the case, then we can start our presentation.
Allô? Axel?
Can you hear me, Axel?
Axel, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Axel, can you hear me?
Je vous reçois très bien, Monsieur Mignane. Vous pouvez...
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Mignane. You can start. Yes, thank you. So, as I was saying, my name is Mamadou Mignane DIOUF. I am a sociologist. I am also a trainer in leadership management, and I'm also the coordinator of the a social forum, and I'm also a Pan-African activist. We will try to add to everything that has been said by Henri earlier, one element that will focus on community leadership during a crisis such as the one we are facing at the moment in Africa and in the entire world with the COVID-19 pandemic. I will ask Axel now, if possible, to start the presentation so that we won't lose too much time. We won't. Axel, could you share your screen and share the
Elle est déjà partagée, je vous prie
presentation?
de continuer. Nous sommes sur le plan de présentation.
Alors, moi, je ne le vois pas avec moi.
It is already shared. However, I could not see it myself. How do I do?
Alors. Bon, je ne vois pas ma présentation, mais je peux...
I cannot see the presentation. I guess I can keep going. I don't have it in front of me. Can I have it, Axel? Because I cannot see it. Can you give us? Can you give me a minute? I'll try to share my screen again.
Voyez-vous à présent?
Voilà,
Can
magnifique.
you see it now? Yes, now I can see it.
Je disais donc, voilà un peu le plan qu'on va essayer
Perfect. So this is the outline that we'll use for this presentation. First of all, a quick overview, and then we'll come back to the context, the rationale. Then we'll talk about some general observation when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, the response, community resilience, and the role that young leaders have had in Africa in the world. And then we'll finish with some recommendations. Now, on this reminder of the context, you all know that from the onset of 2020, the world has been plunged in a pandemic crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic that has had many health consequences, whether the death of many people, but also consequent economic, financial, social, cultural, environmental, and political consequences. All the agenda were in a way shaken. We've noticed a lot of death around the world, and we are still counting death, and we would like to honor their memory as well. But the really the hardest part is the economic recession. You know, the whole world has been plunged in a economic recession.
Nous avons voulu utiliser ces postulats, c'est pour permettre aux jeunes aussi.
We wanted to use this to help young people to come back to what Henri has said earlier. Instead of wondering what has my country done for me, it is better to ask yourself, what can I do for my country? It is during crisis that great leaders are born within community, and crises are born from lights that lighten our future. So usually leaders come when in a period of uncertainty. For example, Cheikh Anta Diop came about when people starting wondering when did humanity start, and so on and so forth. Other leaders were born, Kwame Nkrumah, for example, was born when Africa was wondering about its unity. And this is why young people, it is good for young people to remember said phrases. We also know that this pandemic has created a double shock with a decrease of production in the world and a decrease of demand linked to a decrease of consumption. And we've seen many companies having to fire some of their employees. And this, of course, has consequences. We also lived through confinement in Africa, in Senegal. The debate is around whether we need an emergency state again or a confinement, because those moments were awful, seeing families, population being locked up for more and for days, weeks, and months, and also seeing many events, citizens, the public, sports, all these activities, sharing activities, have been stopped for some time, and this also has the society has taken a blow from that. And so, Henri, you can go on.
Henri, you may proceed. Confinement has effects apart from social and economic effects. It also has psychic effects. We've seen violence against women increase in some countries. We saw women and children attacked. And this is in relation with confinement. We also saw how social relationships changed. We saw that during confinement, while men were at home, animals and even wild animals came out and took the place which was hitherto occupied by human beings. And all of this has consequences, and no country was spared by this situation. If we take the situation in Senegal, which was forced to come up with a plan, an adapted plan of 1 billion CFA francs to deal with the situation without any expectation in the past. And this could indeed lead to budgetary constraints for the state. The consequence also is that the debt of the country has to be cancelled because we spend more than expected. And the call for President Macky Sall in that regard needs to be supported by the youth who are also participating in this forum. Another finding is that the crisis affected the entire world. And even the major powers of the world, the military powers of the world are also affected. There are many countries in the world who are nuclear powers. They have sophisticated weapons. They have military means which are indeed very great. The world has never been so rich. It is true that 1/4 of the banks in the world are filled with gold, and there are major gold reserves. And it is true that the world is indeed a computerized world. But when this COVID-19 came in, it put our development in question. The health sector was indeed put in question. And it was as if all the progress which we had achieved, the military might, technological developments, did not enable human beings across the world to face this pandemic, which indeed showed the limits of our development orientation. And today, the effects are seen all over the world from the economic perspective. And cities were indeed affected. Our educational system, the agricultural system, the health system, all these different systems showed that they were indeed vulnerable and insufficient to deal with the pandemic. We're therefore forced to deal with the pandemic globally and to lay emphasis on community efforts with people in villages, in the quarters, in cities, in schools, and to see how, as a community, we could face this pandemic. And I'll give the floor to Dr. BOUSSO in a short while. So the pandemic indeed forced countries to come up with a global plan, and it involved many stakeholders at different levels. There were indeed measures taken here and there, and it shows the shortfalls of some of the policies. And at the same time, the plans show ingenuity of the people, the resilience of the people to deal with a situation as prescribed by health officials of African countries and the world at large. The pandemic also forced countries to adopt a global plan. This also made it possible for us to see our capacity to resist, but also to adopt a conduct which can make it possible for us to face it following recommendations from health officials and decisions of government across the world. It also enabled us, we as young leaders, you, the young leaders participating in this forum, it enabled you to see how you could live. What were your experiences during this period? How did you face the pandemic? You'll see in the questionnaire some of these issues. there are figures which are indeed revealing. For example, there's 47.7% of men and 52.6% of women, and there's an age group 31 to 36% and 26 to 30%. We notice, therefore, that there is a considerable participation of women, and we all understand why women and young women participate highly, because at the communal level, women play a very important role. At the level of villages and female groups, quarter groups, in social and cultural and sports associations, we notice that women indeed play a major role. Women always mobilize and participate in communal efforts to achieve positive results. Another issue is to see during this period how you learned about the pandemic from the onset. How did you get information? And we noticed that from the answers, some got it from the media, the television, the radio, and the social media. Some learned from their office and the faculty. Some learned about the pandemic from groups of friends and from the family. And we also noticed that at the level of responses to the reaction, how did we react to the pandemic? What was our first reaction when we heard that there was a pandemic and that there were measures to be followed and the preventive measures to be respected? And there also we noticed that the responses vary, with 43% who were not very surprised and 57% who were a bit surprised. And I believe that this surprise was due to the fact that when the pandemic came in a country like China, there are some who were not ready to see it arrive where they were at the communal level, at the level of the institutions, as well as at the level of states. So this could indeed constitute a surprise, but what is even more important is to be aware that the pandemic was there and there was a need to change one's behavior and change our ways of doing things and how to behave on a daily basis. We will also notice that there are answers which show at the communal level, there are some answers and the approach of the community towards the crisis. When they ask, for instance, in your community, how did the community react to the pandemic? There are interesting answers which we find. That is, measures which there are some who accepted, there are some who were skeptical, there are some who did not believe at the beginning, there are some who were repulsive, there were some who said that this was planned. And so there's some who did not know, there are some who were reticent, there are some who were not convinced of what the doctors were saying, and there are some who progressively understood and accepted that there was a need to change their behavior, and there are answers which show that show how the population applied the guidelines laid down and how these measures were not often respected in certain situations by people who continue to hesitate. So once more, this shows the importance of change of behavior and the importance to adapt to preventive measures, because each time the technicians who were in charge and who worked with political leaders made recommendations on what should be done and what should not be done. And I believe that up till now that we're speaking, there are some people who continue to be reticent. They don't want to wear masks in public, in public transport, in the quarters, and even in public places, whereas this is a preventive recommendation which should be respected. You may proceed. Men and women in your community, do you think they were affected in the same way by the pandemic? There also, we find very interesting answers. women were more affected, that is 79%, while men were affected by 19.3%. And there again, we see the importance of being able to observe the measures recommended by doctors, and we see how at the level of communities, the population reacted based on their ages and gender. Men were more affected economically. They are financially responsible for their families. Men are more affected because they don't often respect these preventive measures. It's a matter of discipline between the gender. Men are more affected because they respect preventive measures less than women. All these analyses have been made, and the more we read, we notice that the leaders, the technicians, could, at the end of the pandemic, draw important lessons on how we behave based on gender, the status, the conditions in times of war in quotes, because it was indeed a war, and we're still in that war against an invisible enemy known as coronavirus. Now, continue to another response which we received, very interesting. Have you played any role in the training, information of people in your community? That's what we were expecting. That's what we expect. And that is what we hope to see. We hope to see that the crisis will lead to leadership amongst young men and women, that this crisis should indeed bring light on our communities. And we notice that they talk about 7%, that's 83% responded. So you'll notice that when we look at this situation, we can find without doubt that young women, young female leaders played a greater role than the young men, who quite often were more repulsive. And we also find that the African youth and the youth of the world responded to sensitization, and when there was need for mobilization, and when they were informed, preventive medical measures were taken by medical officials, and they took this into consideration, and they used these preventive measures. And in future, and we hope there'll be no future, if we have to face any such calamity again, such as this pandemic, we should be able to count on our youth to be able to transmit information on mobilization, sensitization, and the general provisions to prevent the pandemic. Now, we cannot hear the speaker. There is a technical problem. Now, there is need for analysis, he says. If we participated at the level of 80-something%, at the level of sensitization, mobilization, I think this also made it possible for us to see the birth of a new group of leaders, new young men and women, who made it possible, of course, for states, for health officials, health institutions to accomplish their task. And if that was the case, there's need to congratulate this group of the youth, and we need to see now how we can work towards the future to limit economic recessions, which constitute a threat to us, and how under such conditions, the different people in different communities, for instance, the Chinese with their ancestral wisdom, succeeded in facing this pandemic. That's when I refer to this word as these two words as crisis, but crisis also is an opportunity. Yes, there's danger where there's a crisis, but there's also an opportunity to be able to produce leaders, to come up with new ideas, to come up with new resilient capacities, so it could throw new light for a community with new leaders to find new ways of adapting and finding solutions to their problems. Every crisis makes it possible, therefore, for debates to take place, for discussions to take place on what should be done and what should not be done, in order to see very clearly what are the new ideas. But it's important to say, as a maxim says, a crisis is an opportunity for the birth of new leaders in the community and societies. And that was the case during this period. And I think all the leaders now have shared this experience, and they need support, and they need to be congratulated. We need to express satisfaction with this idea of bringing all of them together. Now let's go on to the next one. From all of this, which we have referred to, we are tempted to ask ourselves this question: what are we going to do for our community in the face of the crisis? Have we played this role in our communities? If yes, which? The responses were given a while ago. Did we see an offspring of leadership during this period? Yes. And how was it perceived and judged by the population and the communities? These are some of the questions which may be asked in a spirit of analysis, personal attitudes, as well as community attitudes, personal and community attitudes, which could enable us to deal with such situations during such periods, to be able to deal with the difficulty and to come up with the best lessons and the best practices. Now, leadership, communal leadership, we believe that when we talk of community leadership, we're thinking of citizenship also. This word today, which is more often being used to refer to our situation, citizenship enables people to get greater involved in development and leadership, because you don't develop a country, you don't develop a person, you follow a participation and a plan and involvement of the people. So citizenship is all of this put together. Every person who reflects the values and aptitudes of behavior which give meaning to his actions. Yes, his actions should have meaning, all what he does, but all of it is linked to plans and rules of a society which we all have to respect. We respect the duties, but we also respect the obligations. So if a citizen decides to participate by his own free will, he should respect the rules. Here we may refer to the rules which were set out by the health officials, the scientific rules which should be respected. So their participation was needed in times of crisis, as what we are describing right now. Let's move on. The commitment of citizens, as we said a while ago, it's some sort of a summary of all these values in the citizen. And when we talk of citizen commitment, here we are guarantors. We are working towards dealing with a situation. We look towards an ideal and we try to attain an objective. And when we talk about participation, we talk about participating in discussions, in decision-making, in planning, implementation, and follow-up right from the time the problem is posed and right from the time the plan is identified, right up to the period of evaluation and implementation of the different recommendations. So commitment, participation, these are the characteristics of active citizenship. You may proceed. When we take our case, for instance, we have found out that many youth in associations in Senegalese towns here in Dakar, in the countryside, I'll give the example of a countryside at Njarimulai. They participate with NGOs. I saw that in Rufus also, in Kies, in Fatik, in my administrative jurisdiction, and even in Joal, in Guillaume, where I stay. So I see many youth of the association participating actively and very actively in health institutions to ensure that what was supposed to be done is done to prevent the population from being infected by the pandemic. I believe that some amongst this youth were committed in the invention of local materials, as we said a while ago. I was in the technical polytechnic. The youth there invented equipment, and an NGO within Conga assisted the population with the production of antiseptics and masks. And this once more shows that indeed ingenuity, I beg your pardon, was a contributing factor. Now you may proceed. This citizen commitment was strengthened and it led to leadership. And it shows that we live in a community. You don't live in isolation. And it needs to remind everybody that we exist, but in the plural. We live, but in a community. And this also means that by living in this community, are we useful to this community? What can we do for our community? What do we learn from our community? What is our contribution to our community? This is indeed self-awareness, as we were saying a while ago, as my friend said a while ago. So once we have this self-awareness, we also become aware of the fact that we belong to a community. And when we belong to a community, we know the tasks, the missions, the duties, and these duties make it possible for us to know how far we're developing leadership, how we can improve it, how we can strengthen it, so that we become more useful to our community. We're also saying that it is in difficult moments that we know our friends, but it's also in times of crisis that the society discovers its leaders. And this leads us to the next topic. And I said that during the colonial crisis, the struggle for independence, we saw many leaders who led us to independence without too many problems, and they made it possible, that is, to have scientific developments like Sheikh Anta Diop. So the issue of being Black is not a fatality because we are born Black. So in difficult moments, we discover our friends, but in difficult moments, we also discover our leaders and develop leadership. So could we say that this pandemic was a good opportunity? It was a difficulty, it created a lot of problems, but it was also an opportunity for us to develop a citizenship value. It was an occasion to develop greater solidarity, to mobilize ourselves collectively, without which our states would have had greater difficulties in dealing with the pandemic. These are some of the issues which I've raised in these difficult moments, and students in medicines, whom I'm following from afar, this could also be indeed important topics to share amongst themselves. In the countryside in Senegal, for instance, I know that in Cameroon, in Mali, we have all these countrysides and all these discussions taking place in Kenya, Togo, and almost everywhere. So I believe that it is important to carry out an assessment of all of this, draw from them, and come up with documents which could indeed serve our young leaders in future. Why not? Elsewhere, as a development member of a consortium, I belong to an NGO in Senegal, which works in the field of development. I said that I had this experience. I attended meetings with national committees. I also worked with NGOs in Juben, and I attended many meetings up to Seju and Tambakunda, Matam, where we saw that the population was indeed organized with some young leaders, notably women, who participated in the communal radio, and they came up with different plans to enable citizens to conduct themselves appropriately. So this was the case in many continents. Each continent had to come up with its own method. Each country also came up with its own method, but this was all based on, and this shows that we are capable of counting on our own strength in the most difficult moments. And this also shows that when we count on our own strength from the commitment of citizens and the participation as well as awareness, we have been able to develop leadership skills. And this has made it possible, without doubt, for Africa to avoid all what had been forecasted that would happen to Africa. So in recommendations, if Africa has been able to avoid a disaster, it is thanks to this spirit of ingenuity and planning made by these technicians like doctors, the Minister of State, BOUSSO, my friend, and all the different medical teams in African countries, leadership of heads of state who quickly understood that there was a need to take stringent measures, even if these measures were considered unpopular at times, that is, such as state of emergency. In Africa, we have that capacity of ingenuity and resistance, which was indeed sleeping in our citizens. And we've seen that our leaders have been daring, and all of this together with our leaders show that we have been able to face the pandemic, and tomorrow we should be able to draw important lessons and forge through more courageous and resilient positions, because we are in a context where we'll have to deal with many pandemics, many calamities, many disasters in relation with natural disasters, with climate change, in relation also with the rise of sea levels and issues which we do not understand, as well as geopolitical issues. So like other countries, we are capable of facing tragic situations. There is no fatality at that level. And I believe that this pandemic has shown that in Africa, when it is believed that Africa has no capacity to develop, it's wrong. Africa was able to adapt and face the pandemic, and this lesson should be a very important one, and we should be able to face the challenge and all future challenges through political will, consent, political will, leadership, as well as the youth who will constitute the pillar in our communities and who will be professional in their action based on competence. I think of all medical teams, and we should be able to adapt, and we should be patriotic, and we should be civic. Yes, there should be Pan-Africanism. We should be civic at the Pan-African level. There should be international solidarity. Speaker, I'm sorry. I cannot hear the speaker. And that all that will enable us, all of that will enable us to face the challenges today and the years to come. So I'd like to thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you. Thank you once more. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mignane. This has been very interesting on communal leadership, Mr. Mignane. I believe that we can now deal with two or three issues before we deal with section 4. Would like to thank Mr. Diou for this presentation.
Mr. Mignane for this presentation on
I
community leadership with technical support. Then we can take some questions from the participant.
Very interesting. I like it.
Alors, pour ceux qui veulent prendre la parole, vous
Are there
pouvez...
any questions? For those that would like to take the floor, you can raise your hand.
Bonjour.
Oui,
Morning.
Bonjour, je suis Aya
Good morning,
du
yes.
Sénégal. Donc, merci beaucoup pour cette session. Merci à
I am
Monsieur
from Senegal. Thank you very much for this session, and thank you to Mr. Diouf for the presentation that really looked through the difficulties we faced as a young activists in our communities. And he mentioned some solutions that were taken as leaders. My question is the following.
autour de sa cause. Comment faire en sorte que
To mobilize how to mobilize people around our cause, how to mobilize your families, your friends, your community, so that they commit at the same level with you in the fight you want to fight for at the service of your community. Thank you.
Beaucoup de monde à sa cause.
Yes, how to mobilize people to join your cause. Thank you very much, first of all, for the question. You know, in Dakar's neighborhood, in Senegal's neighborhood, or in Africa in general, we see what is called Badianougor, which is women that leave their house and go around the neighborhood to raise awareness, to spend the day informing people, explaining to them, or even participating in the distribution of some kits. How can we keep on raising awareness? I think that we need to create solidarity chains, local chains at the community level, at the city level, at neighborhood level, 4, 5, 6 young leaders that go around the neighborhood. They can go to public areas where population gather. It can be a mosque, it can be a church, it can be a market, it can be a school, it can be a bus stop, and it can also be houses, you know, to keep on talking to the populations on what is happening, how we need to behave, how we need to adapt to the recommendation. Of course, it is not easy, but I believe that 4, 5, or 6 young leaders, whether male or female, that work together going around a neighborhood like the SICAP, could at least convince 10 people daily to adapt to what the doctors are saying, to what decision makers are saying, why we need to accept, for example, curfew, why we need to accept confinement. This is a work of information, informing people to change behaviors that can only be done by the population. It cannot be done by the doctors that are already trying to rush and save lives and take care of the patients. It cannot be done by the mayor as well, but it can be done by citizens, by a group of citizens, by a group of activists that participate, that have gathered right information and try to share them. I've seen many doing that in a region such as Matam, that went to a radio station, a community radio station, to speak to the population in their own language, in Pular, telling women going into the market to wear a mask, for example. And even if you're leaving your house for 2-3 minutes, then you have to understand that you still need to wear a mask. And this work, this solidarity work, this teamwork, to me is one of the strategic approach that will help leaders to rally more people. And I believe that this also stems from a spirit of generosity and sharing.
Merci beaucoup pour la réponse.
Do you have any other question? Thank you very much for your answer.
Je pense qu'on va prendre une toute dernière
I think we'll
question.
take one last question to finish this session, this Q&A session.
Bonjour.
Good morning. Good morning. If you would allow me, I have a contribution rather, if you would allow me, of course. Yes, go ahead, Fatoumata. Thank you very much. I would just like to add that this pandemic had negative consequences for all of us. However, I look at the bright side all the time. Every time I'm faced with a situation, for example, the birth of new leaders in Africa and in particular in Senegal, the solidarity that was implemented in neighborhoods. And on top of that, the population is aware of the danger at the moment. For example, if we do not deal and manage our natural resources, we will be faced with some situation, and this led to the One Health concept that has been created some years ago. For example, now we talk more about it with the health of the environment, the health of animals, and the health of the population. And I believe that this is a concept that needs to be better developed in our country so that we can prevent some situation. Being leaders, first and foremost, means to have a spirit of prevention before acting when faced with a crisis. But I live in Ziguinchor myself. We manage the health of the sub-region and also neighboring countries such as the Gambia and Guinea. And so sometimes people coming for cancer and such have to be moved to Dakar to be taken care of. If we were able to take care of them ourselves here in Ziguinchor during the pandemic, then we would have managed to lessen the transportation of patients. Yes, yes, I do understand what you've said, and I agree with what you've said to work together. I was saying earlier that we will be faced with more and more crises linked to the environment, of course, climate change, and everything surrounding it. And I believe that today we could even, with Galien, think of putting into place a young leaders international network that would look into how to support policies in the areas that you mentioned, for example, the environment, the pollution, how to preserve our environment, and this network of young Galien International would contribute to, first of all, raise awareness among the population to change the behaviors in a climate change context, in a context where we have more and more pandemic happening, to see how we can look at the living conditions in urban and peri-urban areas. This cannot be the work of the state and state actors. It needs to be carried by a citizen involvement, a citizen participation, and that young students go out of universities during the holidays to go into neighborhoods, into rural areas, to talk to the populations and to disseminate the behavioral change models that we need more and more nowadays. This, in a way, is the idea of what was done during the 50s by other young leaders, the Association of African Students, that would get organized. And I believe that this allows so that the shortcomings that you have mentioned, for example, helping the health structures in the regions. I've heard Dr. Bousso and his team mentioning it. I've heard the Professor Ewamari COLL-SECK advocate on that. This advocacy also could be carried by young leaders, the young leaders that you are, that could advocate for this solidarity so that when we look at budget allocation for ministries, how do we make so that now we move towards health structure being strengthened? This is indeed possible, but if we only think of the ministry, that the ministry needs to do that, or it is the doctors that have to do that, then we are wrong. And we need also to look at preserving the environment. We need to look at daily resilience preservation measures. How can we play a role? It could be a network, it could be a group, it could be something that gathers us all so that we can contribute to not only advocate, inform, and sensitize, but also to have a look at the issue of budget allocation given the priorities and how this can be carried by young leaders in Africa. So Fatoumata, I believe that in Digasha where you are, yes, indeed, you should be able to create a group of young leaders in this sense, and maybe link it to a young group in Guinea-Bissau and Guinea-Conakry, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in Mali, in Cameroon, in Burkina, in Niger. And I think that then you could see building a Pan-African chain of young leaders that work together and that support the policies and that participate, that commit. And if this is done, then we will be able to face the challenges and be able to move towards sustainable development. Thank you very much, Mr. Mignane Diouf. Thank you to the different speakers for your questions and contribution. Mr. Henri Foucault will now come back for session 4 on how to develop your leadership potential as a young leader. He will also talk on mentorship and coaching. Thank you very much, Fatou. And thank you, Mignane, for a very stimulating presentation. To follow the same vein, but dwell more on the role of the individual, we will now talk about your role as young people, meaning how to make sure that you play the role that is expected by the community to meet the needs of the community. As Mignane said, it is during crisis that leaders are born, and change cannot happen can only happen at the individual level. Of course, you will agree that we cannot change other, we can only change ourselves. And then with this change, we can learn to influence, to mobilize, and to inspire others. And this is where the community change can take place. Then we'll talk about your leadership style during this crisis linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. What is your role? And then within this context, we'll look at how mentorship and coaching can be useful. First of all, develop your potential as a young leader. First of all, let us start at your level, at the individual level. When you did the quiz earlier, what was your reaction when you discovered your style? Was it, oh, of course, I expected this, or, oh, wow, I'm surprised, or I am shocked? Not that. What was your reaction? So I'll now invite you to take the floor briefly, as you've done before, and you can answer the question, what will you do? I seem to have some technical issues. It is not working.
Donc, vous avez la parole.
So you have the floor. Shabi Batatan Donald, you have the floor.
Juste deux, trois. Allez-y, vous avez le micro.
You have the floor.
Merci, bonjour.
Thank you very much.
Je suis Shabi.
My name is Shabi Batantan Donald. I live in the Côte d'Ivoire. Shabi, excuse me. You need to turn off one of your devices. You have two devices, so please turn one of them off.
Allez-y, allez-y, Donald.
Go ahead. Yes, indeed, you have two devices on.
Ça y est, allez-y. Ah ben non, là c'est le micro.
Go ahead, please. Oh no, it seems that his mic is just off now.
Non. Écoutez, Donald, il est...
Donald, it is paramount that you turn off the other device that is currently on. If not, we'll have to continue, given that we have some time constraint and we want to finish on time. Go ahead, if it's working now. Good morning, all. My name is Shabi. I live in Côte d'Ivoire and I work at the Medical Science University. I study at the Medical Science University. Thank you for the training. Now, my reaction when I found out my leadership style, it wasn't really a surprise because deep down, this has always been my thinking, you know?
J'ai toujours été comme ça.
I've always been like that. And I believe that with this confirmation, the confirmation of this test, I'll be able to better help my friends in the lecture theater to help them understand better. Thank you very much, Donald. I've seen in the comments, in the many comments that were shared with me, one of you has reminded
Connais-toi toi-même, en grec.
what Platon has said, know yourself. And self-awareness is really the starting point of self-development. I don't see other hands being raised, so we'll continue. Now, what do you do with this awareness now that you know about your strength, your weaknesses, your development potential? What do you do? Now you need to start the work. Now, if you remember the four components of emotional intelligence, you have to know how to manage yourself with the feedback you've received, and this is what allows you to really target what are the needs of the community, what are the potential for growth, to create an impact and to work towards the good of the community. For the good of the community, rather. Now, I won't go back to the different style. I would just give you the name. You have the classic entrepreneur that is motivated by profit. You have a modern missionary with the human values. You have the problem solver to face a problem, but based on your own expertise, and the solution finder that builds on the collective and consider that the results are owned by all. Now we'll look into crisis situation linked to the COVID-19, of course, that you've already been faced with, or that you may be faced with, or that you will be faced with in the future. now we'll look at it and look at the weight they have on you, the impact they have on you. Can there, can it ignite your leadership potential? I really liked what my friend Mignane said when he said that it was during crisis that leaders were born, that their vocation is born as well, their purpose, because crises are opportunity sources, and this is how great leaders in history were born. It is not always when everything is going great in society, but rather when there is a crisis going on. But it is at the individual level that it starts. You cannot change others, you have to change yourself first, and this increase your team work capacity to push forward a certain agenda. Now we'll look into two scenarios, two cases, two scenarios, maybe 15, 20 minutes. We'll do that in a plenary. I'll read the scenario for you. And at the end of every scenario, there is a question, and then you'll be invited to answer those questions and go as deeply and to be as thorough as possible in the time that we have to try and learn some lessons. First of all, crisis in the hospital. So the two scenarios were set up on the basis of a very simple idea. You have people working in the health sector, and you have people working in community activities. First of all, it's the health sector, and then it will, the second scenario will deal with your community action. So first of all, you're part of a team that takes care of COVID-19 patients. The team is composed of two interns and yourself. So you've just started as an intern, one epidemiologist, one diagnostic doctor, a pharmacist, and a nurse. This is your team. You have many ambulances that have come at the same time with 10 patients that have that have acute symptoms of COVID, some of the respiratory troubles. Many patients are in a dire state and with their family members that are shouting so that the member of their family are admitted in a priority. This is a crisis context and it's quite chaotic. You've been threatened, and at this very moment, your chief, the team leader, is suddenly struck with fever, and he tells you to replace him. Before leaving, he tells you to leave, to replace him. The team members do not agree on how to deal with this crisis. The question is, how will you proceed? How will you bring back order? How will you act to calm people down and move forward? What is the leadership role that you will adopt? Will you adopt your own style by default or another? And if yes, why? So I invite you to take the floor and we'll have a discussion on this case, a very clear case. But I would like to have your reaction. How would you envisage your intervention? Out of the blue, you're put under the spotlight, you are under pressure. This is the crisis that Mignane mentioned, and we want to see if a leader will be born out of you to face this situation. First of all, the floor is given to Abdoulaye Coulibaly. Abdoulaye Coulibaly. I'm Abdoulaye Coulibaly from Mali. In my opinion, given the state of the crisis, I will start talking with the member of my team. I'm now in charge of giving directives and regulations. And so, first of all, I'll leave the people in the ambulance give the reanimation support because they're already with a team So these people will stay in the ambulance, and there will a team that will stay with them, with the paramedic. People that came with their parents will select the more dire cases and put them in reanimation room to take care of the people that are facing more danger. Then I'll try to have a discussion with the parents so that they can understand that the hospital capacity cannot welcome everyone, and then therefore we need to look at the most difficult cases first, and then little by little we'll take care of their family. I'll use my leadership to talk to people, use their ideas, but being firm in my decisions. Thank you very much, Abdoulaye. Will now go as be as thorough as possible. This is not a medical question. It's just linked to the leadership role. I'm not a doctor, so I cannot recommend this or that action. But you said that you would, first of all, discuss it with your team, and then you've given some thought of on what you'll do. What would you how will you talk to your team if they're all busy at the time? I'm not saying that what you said was wrong. However, this is a crisis situation where you have to intervene and do something. You want to say something else? I can see. Go ahead. So what I wanted to say is sometimes when you rush into acting, then it brings more problems, more issues. But if you take 1 or 2 minutes just to share, it is true that it is a crisis, but I think that this reflection will allow us to have more ideas instead of just leaving everyone doing their own thing. This will create more problems, and maybe this will have the parental link into play more. Thank you for this precision. Now we can see your style. You'll invest 1 or 2 minutes to prevent more problems later. Dr. MFI, you have the floor.
Bonjour.
Good morning.
Bonjour, vous m'entendez?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Mr. Foucault. So my leadership style is the modern missionary. So I would apply it, take my responsibility and try to find a solution quickly, but at the same time, I'll try to adopt the solution finder leadership style to look at to have a consensus and be able to take care of the situation, trying to calm people and be able to better guide. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like you to really listen to the answers that are being given, and then if you disagree, please say it. This is a group discussion. So you all have the floor. Khadija Toubari, you have the floor. Kadia Toubari, rather, you have the floor.
Allez-y.
You have the floor. Go ahead.
Good morning to you all. For me, in such a
équipe que je donnerai des consignes pour. Bonjour à tous.
Oui, allez-y.
OK. Dans ce genre de situation,
in
d'abord,
this type of situation, I'll quickly mobilize my team. I'll give them guidelines to deal with those who are sick, first of all, in emergency situations. And then I'll go to patients who are indeed agitated to explain to them the emergency of the situations and how they should be calm in such a situation, and why we should deal with other patients before coming to them. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And once you finish speaking, kindly put down your hand, or else you may be called again because there are many people who want to participate. Teres Aime Mendy.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon. I'm Therese Mendy from the University in Dakar. Now, how can you bring back order? I'll begin through communication, that is, bring everybody on a crucial point which concerns all of us, that is, trying to help the patients and to ensure that all of them are provided with adequate care. I'll first of all talk to my team and later to the families, but I'll do all at the same time because it's more or less the same picture that I'll have to address to both groups. So now coming to this leadership issue, it is not my leadership still. According to the questionnaire, it seems to me that here the values will not help me to better expose the problem and find solutions, but I would like to rely on my experience because I have been able to deal with my superior who helped me in acquiring this experience and to make the experience evolve. Okay, thank you. In such a case, you would give preference to solving the problems, even if you are a modern missionary. I want to see whether your colleagues agree with you here. So we're seeking other opinions. Usman, dear, you have the floor.
Bonjour.
Proceed. Good afternoon, moderator. Good afternoon, Mr. Mendy. Well, for me, as far as this issue is concerned, I already know the composition of my team. As the leader of this team, I would deal with it simultaneously. That is, I'll put the doctor who carries out the diagnosis at the head, while at the same time, I'm talking to the different complainants. So we'll deal with all the urgent cases. I will be calming the spirits of the sick, if I may use that word, while the other part of my team will be making progress that's led by the doctor. That is the strategy I would have followed. Well, you didn't identify any style, but it's a multiplicity of styles. That's it. So there's no particular style which you have identified. No, there's no particular style. There's no particular style, I beg your pardon. Thank you very much, Usman. I'm going to complicate issues even more. If it is the head of your team who suddenly falls sick, and he has always been the head of the team and everyone used to listen to him, and now you belong to a team and the members of the team do not want to accept your authority. So you have a dual problem, the crisis and the fact that they believe that, you are not superior to them, primo inter pares, that they don't quite see how you can give them instructions because they don't believe you are above them. So with this difficulty, this particular difficulty, how will you react? What would you do? What would you say? These are real situations which arrive in life, in hospitals and in other places. So it is important for us to reflect on this. Mansusi, you have the floor.
Okay. Bonjour, je suis Asetu Mansour.
Good afternoon, I'm Asetu Mansusi from Mali. Now, when I have to deal with such a team, I'll try to make them understand that the moment is not opportune for us to quarrel, but to find a solution. And afterwards, we'll have to discuss authority. So what is more important is to deal with people, help those who are in danger, and having respiratory problems, for instance. And so I'll quickly hold a meeting with them and try to bring everyone understand that we place ourselves at the position of equality, and then we move ahead to help those who are in need, and that in health matters, it is not a matter of influence, it's a life of patients that's in danger. And we'll begin by dealing with those whose cases are more serious. We'll try to organize them in different groups and deal with the more urgent cases. And that is how I'll deal with the situation. Thank you very much. So you're aware, even before I ask others, you're aware of the fact that all of this should be done very quickly. There's a lot of noise, people shouting, or some even threatening. There's a lot of excitement, and you are right in the middle. Now let's continue. Fatoumata Diogo, you have the floor. Once more, thank you. For me, first of all, I believe that in an emergency situation, there's the need to take emergency measures. First of all, I'll call my group and all those involved who are making a lot of noise. I'll advise them to calm down, and I'll tell them that we're all there to help the sick, and everybody wants his or her patient to be saved. And that can only be done in a calm atmosphere. And then I'll move towards my colleagues and tell them that the leader of the group is not there, and we have to do the job in his or her absence. And while holding this meeting with them, others will be trying to categorize the patients, because in such a situation, we should know what to do. Everything should be done to ensure that none of the patient dies. For me, I'm not afraid of doing what is right, even in emergency situations. So whether it's a son of the president or the son of a peasant, we have to make sure that the right thing is done. Now, in terms of leadership, I want to lay emphasis on the style of leadership. What would you adopt amongst the different styles? Well, I believe that personally, I believe that I have to do what is right. I believe that I'll simply do what is right and without favoring any of the different groups. So it's not really the type of leadership. I'll choose any form of leadership which will enable me to solve that problem. So it's you are tending towards the looking for solutions to problems. Let's get another person, perhaps Micah Gafun, and afterwards we'll continue.
Allô, bonjour. Vous m'entendez
Good
là?
afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. You may proceed. I'm Micah Bafu from the University of Dakar. And very honestly, as far as I'm concerned, if there are persons who don't agree that I should lead the team, and if they find any problem with me leading the team, they should just go away. In other words, in times of crisis, I cannot accept that people bring in more problems, because at that time, what is important is dealing with the patients, and I'll give strict and clear guidelines, and I'll make it clear to them that I'll not be able to work with them if they don't follow the guidelines. That's my approach. So you are indeed a standard entrepreneur, a classical one. Well, that's interesting. But you see, it's good. Thank you very much. Do you want to add anything else? I wouldn't interrupt you. No, that's all. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Micah. So we'll stop as far as these cases are concerned at this juncture. But as you see, there's nothing simple, as a matter of fact. I am sure you are quite aware of the fact that in such a situation, which is though fiction, but could be realistic. In such a situation, it may arise. It will arise. Perhaps it has already happened to you at some point of your life. For doctors and health officials, that is where you know yourself very well and you know your strengths and weaknesses. You will be able to take that into consideration, to act in a coherent manner, coherent with you and with the situation. So there's no simple response to these questions which I asked, but it is an opportunity for you to reflect on this sort of situations so that you should start telling yourselves, what would I do in such a situation? And how could I prepare? Because you know that at times people say, but you were lucky. But what's luck? According to the adage, luck is preparation which comes to meet a given situation. So if we are not prepared, if we are prepared, if we keep our eyes open, we are aware of what happens around us. When such a situation comes up, we act, and that is not really luck, but it is the result of all the work which you had done downstream. Now, coming to the second case, this is at the level of crisis in the community. You're working for an NGO which fights against the promotion of barriers in a poor economic area. And there's a wearing of masks. People are living in poverty where there can be no doctor, for instance. And now, in your advocacy, would you stand with the head of the local community to transmit important information to the public? In other words, you rely on the local chief, the head of the community, to help you in disseminating this information, this vital information in the fight against COVID-19, for instance. Tomorrow, you'll have a popular meeting which will be organized only on this. You have bands, there are loudspeakers, and everybody's there, and you have to address inhabitants of a quarter, and the local chief is there with you. And you count on the support of this local chief. You have already held many meetings with him, and to you, he seemed to be on the same page as you on this particular issue. And all of a sudden, someone comes and sees you and tells you that this same communal chief has a problem with the message which you have to give the following day, and he'll refer to some conspirations. Now, the question is, what approach would you adopt to solve the problem? What leadership style will you adopt? Yours, another person's own? Why? Now you have the floor. We'll do this in 15 minutes.
Je vous écoute.
Now we're all ears. Abdoulaye Coulibaly, you have the floor. I'm Abdoulaye Coulibaly from Mali. From my point of view, I would set aside this community chief, and finally it would be treason on his part, betrayal on his part. So I would try to set aside this chief, and I'll get into contact with the young advisors in the community. Even if I have only a few days left, I should be able to form a team. This committed youth know the reality of this COVID-19, and with this youth, I should be able to galvanize other youth, and I would be able to solve the problems directly. I would not take into consideration the dramatic issues, but I would look for quick solutions to save the community. Thank you. Now, just a second, Abdoulaye, I want to be provocative to ask you more questions. So you're going to cancel the meeting of the evening. Yes, I'll look for young people who share my ideas and galvanize them so that we can work together. Would you return to see that chief? And how are you going to cancel the meeting of the eve of that they went, everything has already been prepared in advance. I really don't have the answers, but I'm just asking these questions to incite you to provide answers, because these are situations which may occur. Well, it is just at times we find ourselves in this sort of a situation and we really want to come out of it, and we have to take extraordinary decisions to solve the problems, and leadership is indeed trying to solve such obstacles. Do you have anything to add? In the interest of discussion and to explore this realistic solution, what would you say? Well, I'll take an example which I experienced in a hospital. I received a person, and when I tried to discuss with the person did not listen to me. But when I let him understand that I was a leader, he was forced to comply with what I was saying. So when I face such a situation, I would mobilize the youth, and they will, I'll have their support. And when they can understand that it is the population cell that is in question, and when they know that the population understands this, they all will work with me. But if we don't let this chief understand that without him we can proceed, we'll never forge ahead. Thank you very much, Abdoulaye. Now let's try to see whether some of your colleagues have anything to add or whether they agree with you. Now I'm trying to take names of people who have not yet spoken. Lamarala Diallo Uga. I'm trying to get the names of those who have not yet taken the floor.
Alors, bonjour à tous.
Bonjour, madame.
Good afternoon, once more. Good afternoon, madame. It's Marana Diallo from Guinea. Within this purview, I would not cancel the meeting. I would maintain it, but I would go back to meet the chief in question. I will not be angry. I'll go and meet him, and I'll try to bring him to reason, because I believe that in some communities, there are people without whom one cannot make any achievements, one cannot achieve certain things. And these are people who can influence situations. So if he's a chief, it means he can influence the people and his opinion counts. Therefore, I'll try to bring him to my side and to make him understand that he's indeed derailing and he should join the right track instead of just setting him aside and going to search for other people. Because when we cancel the meeting, it will no longer have the same impact. People will no longer have the same attention as before, and that could even arouse doubt in their minds. Yes, so I could try to deal with this situation by dealing with the chief before the appropriate day. Thank you, Lamarana. Now, what is the aspect of leadership we talked about this morning which would appeal to you? So we're trying to go a little bit further. You are not obliged to respond. I believe that this would boost my capacity and it will influence people to agree with my point of view. And how are you going to do that? I really don't want to ask you this question you alone, but the question is addressed to everyone. How could you deal with this in an emergency situation where there's pressure concerning the stakes? You know that you have to bring people to your side. What technique we discussed this morning could you use to achieve your goal? Thank you, Lamarana. This question is addressed to everyone else and not just to you. I could ask the same question to others. Emmanuel Naomi Nasoge, you may respond. You have the floor.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon. We cannot hear Emmanuel. There is a technical problem. Okay. The moderator says he too cannot hear the speaker. There is an audio problem. Your audio is quite active. Perhaps it's the network which is not working very well. Now we can hear you. You may proceed. In such a situation, good afternoon. Emmanuel, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Perhaps it's a network problem. Maybe you could try once again.
Je suis désolé, Emmanuel, mais ça passe pas.
I'm sorry, Emmanuel, but we cannot hear you. I'm sorry.
Non, Emmanuel, je suis vraiment désolé, mais ça ne passe pas.
Emmanuel, I'm really sorry, but we cannot hear you. I'll have to ask someone else. Perhaps we may come back to you later. Aissatou Barry, you have the floor. Aissatou Barry may need to increase her volume.
Aissatou, je ne vous entends pas.
Aissatou, I cannot hear you. Please get closer to your microphone.
Non, le son ne passe pas.
The sound is not loud enough. Have you really increased your volume, your microphone?
Votre ordinateur, non, ça ne passe pas, hein? D'accord.
Because we cannot hear you very well. I'm sorry, Aissatou. Perhaps we'll come back to you later. Aminata Sidikou, you have the floor.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon. Now we can hear you very well. I'm Nde Aminata Sidikou, and I'm from Dakar. You're welcome. Thank you. In such a situation, I believe that I would go to the chief of the community. I'll try to explain to him in simple terms, because the people may not understand the stakes. Perhaps they don't understand at times because of the manner in which it is explained to them. So I'll explain to him in very simple language the stakes and the consequences, so that we should try to avoid some of those consequences through communication. And if possible, we should contact people of the locality who could help me translate in their local language, so that I could explain with images and illustrations, so that they could understand better. Okay, that is very good. I'm going to be the devil's advocate. Now let's imagine a situation where he tells you, yes, but I understood you the very first time, so why are you coming back again? This morning, we talked about several aspects of leadership, but there's a key notion. We talked about it this morning. So what would you gain in such a situation? Aminata, I'm not just asking the question to you alone, but to everyone else. You're not obliged to respond. Now, I may have to ask other people, and thank you very much. Now, I'm very happy to see so many women amongst you taking the floor, and that is a very good thing. And yeah, you have the floor. And afterwards, we'll come back to the women. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. I'm Jay from Senegal. You're welcome. For me, I'll try to discuss with the chief, and I'll try to make him understand. Rather, I'll ask him what his problem is. I'll try to understand him. I'll try to understand what his problem is and why he changed his mind all of a sudden. And I'll try to convince him to understand that what we are going to do is in the interest of his people and his group. And if he does not agree with what is supposed to be done, I would make him understand the consequences. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. Now I'll ask one or two other persons, and then we'll have to stop, because we are going to make a proposal of an approach which you may follow. Saiduba, you have the floor. Tieno Saiduba. It's Tieno Saiduba from University Gamal, Abdel Nasser from the University of Abdel Gamal, Nasser from Conakry. Well, I'll try to meet resource persons and I'll invite them to be humble and to try to face the situation, for instance, the consequences of the situation. Thank you very much. That's a very interesting approach. Know the facts. Thank you. And let us get a last comment from Diallo.
On ne vous entend pas, Kadidiatou.
We can't hear you, Kadidiatou Diallo. Now we can hear you. I'm from Dakar. For me, I'll go back and meet the chief and ask him what his position is in regard to the recommendation and what he thinks about all what we had discussed earlier. I would listen to him and try to see the reasons which he is adducing and why he changed his mind. And afterwards, we will discuss, and if necessary, I'll try to explain to him that we agree with him and we try to bring him to our side so that he should share our point of view without necessarily annoying him. So we should be able to influence him from a general perspective. Thank you. Well, that's the goal. Thank you very much. There are many other people who want the floor, but we'll have to stop at this juncture for this section. The idea is to explore the different possibilities which are different from your comfort zone. You must know that if my first approach is like this, is it necessarily the right one? You should be able to ask yourself questions. You must be able to question yourself and defy yourself. For instance, this morning, I quoted to you that you should try to understand and should try to be understood. And this is an attribute of an efficient leader. In a situation where there's a lot of pressure and emergency, wouldn't it be, many of you stated this, wouldn't it be interesting to see this chief with whom you had already discussed and to tell him, as you said, in a very modest manner, because you don't come as if you are the one who knows everything, but you come like someone who has come to listen. And you give him the time and accord to him the necessary attention for him to express himself. Then you ask the right questions so that he should indeed express his entire views. And then you will understand the roots of this conspiration. And afterwards, based on what you will have understood, and this could indeed lead to a situation which may not be identifiable.
Alors, en français, c'est un peu pas simple, hein, parce que ce sont deux modes de communication. Et vous pouvez rajouter ça à la petite boîte à outils que je vous ai ouverte ce matin et que vous aviez déjà avec vos propres outils. Deux modes de communication, l'un c'est inquiry et l'autre c'est advocacy. Inquiry, ça veut dire qu'on cherche à comprendre, on s'intéresse à, on écoute d'une façon empathique. Advocacy, c'est qu'on est en mode plaidoyer. La recherche montre que nous avons tous, par défaut,
Research shows that we all have, by default, a preferential mode, meaning that there are some people that with friends and family, they are using advocacy by default, meaning that they listen all the while thinking of their own point of view. The question that they ask are questions that are will disagree with what the person they're talking to is saying, or even offer another perspective. It is something that reflects the advocacy mode.
soit par nature, soit parce qu'ils l'ont développé, ont, par défaut donc peut-être qu'ils l'ont au départ, sont très bons pour écouter.
So sometimes people are able to listen, to make people talk, to help them understand what is happening with them. This shows a profound interest in people. So you have inquiry, advocacy. You try to understand, or you use an advocacy. You could maybe think to contribute and try to really understand what is happening in the mind of this community chief, so that they would understand that if he thinks that he is your enemy, then the risks are really high. This is something I wanted to share with you to show that there is no easy situation, and to use the leadership characteristic, identify in which level you have to develop yourself and use other tools, and try to understand the inquiry mode instead of the advocacy mode, to try and understand the method that you're using.
Donc, je ne propose pas une réponse tranchante sur le problème que j'ai soulevé
I
ici.
am not giving you a firm answer on this, but rather giving you some ideas to really think about it, and maybe it will open interesting perspective for the future.
En tout cas, de ces deux scénarios, nous avons vu qu'en tant que jeunes, vous avez
We've seen that as young people,
opportunités de faire preuve de leadership.
you'll have many opportunities to show leadership qualities.
Pour terminer, juste un rappel, pensez à la conscience de soi et à la gestion de soi.
Think about self-awareness and also self-management. This implies to be able to really control yourself and to focus on the results at hand. Be optimistic. This is one of the characteristics of the leader that we haven't mentioned, optimism. It was shown that good leaders, efficient leaders, are optimistic. They always see the bright side. A few words on coaching and mentorship. It is good to know oneself, but if you manage to master self-management, then you have a better grasp on it. Coaching is a very powerful tool that allows a coach with the right method at hand to know how to act. You know that coaching is done through question, no, not answers. That allows you to explore new perspective, to deepen what you already have within yourself. And this helps you to really deploy your leadership potential. So you have to find the right coach. There are many coaches at your disposal already that will allow you with the right method to develop your potential. I'll share with you a method. This is the GROW method, and we can even say growth method. The coach helps you through questions, precise questions, to identify your development objective. R is the reality. What is the reality of the moment? What have you tried to do? What is the context in which you find yourself? O regards the opportunity, the options, the obstacles you have to overcome. W is for the way to follow. I've given a class earlier last week on coaching method. So W is for the way to follow, and T is for the timeline. H is how you will move forward. So the right tool, the right coaching method can be a very powerful to help you unlock your leadership potential. And I'll end on a few words on mentorship. It is very different from coaching. I hear people confusing the two often. It's a tool that is based on a trust relationship, someone that has more experience, a senior, and that knows you and with whom you are comfortable, and that guides you through your growth, your learning, and shares with you his or her wisdom to become an amazing leader. So on these words, I would like to wish you full success in your life as a young leader, whether in the health sector, in community life in Africa. Thank you very much.
Merci, merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much to Henri Foucault. It was a very enriching session. We better understand the difference between coaching and mentorship. I really like this scenery that made us think, and as it was said by Mignane, it is during crisis that leaders are born. Unfortunately, this training is coming to an end. I've learned a lot, and I believe that you too. I'll now give the floor to Oumar Touré, that is the YALI coordinator, that will talk about the key. The key aspect of this training on leadership.
Merci Fatou.
Thank you very much, Fatou.
Henri, Mignane, bravo, félicitations pour cette belle prestation.
Henri and Mignane, congratulations. It was a very informative presentation. I am very happy to share this formation with you, this training with you. We would like to thank as well the Professor COLL-SECK for this opening session, as well as the President COHEN for their opening address that I've already shown you the context of this training. They've said from the onset that it is we build hope on these young people so that this session can strengthen in them the capacity that will help them take advantage on the ground, go above their own potential in order to work and leave a legacy to the continent. This allows them, it shows you the anchoring of Henri and Mignane on the importance of the role of leaders on the development of its community, not for the short term, but also for the future. And this has also showed through leadership style, given different situations, how this potential needs to be built to be able to attain excellence and become an efficient leader. When Henri was saying that the last characteristic that he will focus on is humility and listening skills. These to make sure that the leader is wise. Yes, we talk about young leaders and we talk about wisdom. This leads to some questioning, and the scenery have shown it. How can we, in difficult situation, crisis situation, having conflicts, we ask young people to show wisdom, to make sure that the energy surrounding them can be harnessed for one single cause. When it comes to COVID-19, it is the case. When it comes to facing a health crisis in a hospital, when it is in a neighborhood facing difficulties, it is also the case. And as Mignane said, it is during crisis that leaders are born. But I would also like to raise the attention of our youth. Sometimes there are no crises, but we need leaders because things have to change. And it is in those situations that we prepare the future. And we prepare for a crisis in a given region when development conditions are not met and when nothing changes the situation, when there is a problem. So we also need our young people to think that when they think that everything is all right, given the objective that we talked about, how can we look at the birth of leaders during a situation where everything seems to be all right? I would also like to note a very important element. Leadership is built. It is not linear. It presents different style, and what is important here is to know about your style and the style of others. We know that because we do not live in individual situations, we always need to invite others in conflict resolution. If we do not show openness to be able to understand others, to be able to mobilize them around our common cause, then we can face other issues. And I believe, therefore, this is a very important element that we need to cultivate, to know our style, to strengthen it, but also know the style of others, of our colleagues, the supervisor, those being supervised, the neighbors, members of the communities, what are their styles so that we can act on it, work with them, and meet our objectives for the community. I do not know how much time I have, Fatou, but I would love to hear from 2 or 3 participants on how how they see this training session and what are the lessons learned before we talk about how to generate your participation certificate. We are running out of time. Maybe we can take one participant that will briefly intervene. Thank you very much, Fatou.
Je vois la main de Abdoulaye Coulibaly.
I can see the hand of Abdoulaye Coulibaly.
Abdoulaye?
Abdoulaye.
Oui,
Bonjour.
Good morning. My name is Abdoulaye Coulibaly from Mali. To summarize, I would like to thank the whole team, first of all. It's been a plus for myself. It allowed me to better know myself and to deal with my emotions in certain situations, and especially the second one. It shows that we need more listening skills to be able to move forward. I would say that this type of session need to continue so that we can become tomorrow's leaders.
Merci bien, Abdoulaye.
Thank you, Abdoulaye.
Ceci nous donne déjà un élément d'appréciation.
This gives us already an element. What participant can do with these sessions that were very practical on how we can understand this, to work on your own style and understand other style as well, and how to act in a situation, in a given situation, to meet your objective. Fatou, do we have any participant? We have participant in this very important meeting. Usually, when we would have an in-person session, to put them in groups so that they would think on the next step, what they can do together as young leaders to invest what they've acquired in the training. It will be difficult to do this work with the time that we have, but I would like to ask different participants through the existing network to propose 3 main actions that they each envisage to implement in order to allow them to invest what they've learned from this training on the ground. These situations are either individual, personal, or on an activity they're already implementing on the ground. I'll rephrase my question. I would like to invite each participant to send us 3 main activities that they would like to implement either to develop their leadership style or to overcome an issue on which they're working on the ground. While doing that, while saying that, I'm also coming back to Henri's last point on coaching and mentorship. So each participant, for example, could send us this through the link, and this will allow us to identify the needs expressed by the youth on which we can build a support program. This is what I wanted to say as a next step for this training session. When it comes to the certificate, you will have to click on the link that will be sent to you in the chat in French or in English to be able to generate your participation certificate to this training session. I would like to finish by thanking the Galien Foundation, the Professor COLL-SECK, for having associated to this activity the YALI, that is an activity that has been implemented and that is led by the CESAG in Senegal. So one of the main trainers was Mr. Mignane that has participated with you to this session and that has allowed the participant to have access to notions that are very useful for the development of our continent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Oumar Touré. As Mr. Touré has said it, please do not forget to generate your participation certificate. The link will be shared in the chat. Now I'll leave the floor to Dr. Denis Brun, that is the director of Empower Swiss and Empower France.
Dr. Denis Brun?
Dr. Denis Brun, you have the floor.
Dr. Denis Brun?
Dr. Denis Brun, you have the floor.
Est-ce que l'assistance technique
Could technical assistance please help us deal with this matter? We are unable to join it. Denis Brun, could you raise your hand so that you can be given the floor?
Alors, Fatou, Dr. Denis Brun nous fait savoir qu'il...
Fatou, Dr. Denis Brun is trying to speak, but his microphone isn't working. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect, thank you. I think that we cannot use my camera at the moment because I'm facing technical difficulties with my microphone enough. I would like to thank everyone that have allowed this session to take place. I would like to thank Mrs. the Minister, our COLL-SECK, and Mr. Cohen from the foundation, the Galien Foundation, for having allowed this session. I think it was a success, and I would like to thank as well my colleagues from Empower, Henri and Fatou here for their work, and I would also like to thank Mr. TOURE from YALI and CESAG, Mr. DIOUF, and Mrs. Yassine Jimbo from Speak Up Africa. After the introduction given by my friend Paul LALVANI, I would like to conclude in French, and I hope that you'll understand. It is saddening for me to not be able to join you in Africa, in Senegal, and in Dakar, because it was a pleasure for me to be able to participate in this forum in the past. This wasn't a session for future leaders. No, you are already leaders. And it is quite surprising to learn about everything that you're able to do to face the pandemic of COVID-19. It is remarkable, and I'm happy that this session has given you the opportunity to put some names on how you're working, that this allows you to choose leadership styles to learn how to adapt to different situations and how your leadership has to evolve. What is clear from what I've heard is that you're not the future leaders, you're already leaders now, and this is quite remarkable. I am actually happy to have heard all the contributions that have taken place today, and I hope that you'll show the same enthusiasm and determination to be at the service of the population that you would like to help. This was a very brief conclusion, so I will not say more. Thank you very much to each and every one of you, and I would like to wish you fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much, Dr. Denis Brun. This is a perfect closing speech. Thank you to all of you for participating. I hope that it was informative for all of you. Do not forget to click on the link to generate your participation certificate. Thank you to the Galien Foundation, to the Forum Galien Afrique, to our speakers, Henri, Mignane, Mathieu, and your technical team and the team of YALI and Empower. Thank you very much. We will convene in 3 minutes. Yes, in 3 minutes for the launch of the Speak Up Africa Innovator Young Innovator Health Awards. Thank you very much.